Somebody sent me that's 17. Like, really? That all makes sense. What? They can have it. Yeah. I was gonna get fun. I was gonna get fun. I was calling Leggings and Alex and coming up with the year. Yeah, you really got to get dressed up. Or yeah, well, make sure my name is that way. Right here. Jeans and polo shirt. Just like my cousin, just like the ministry. Yeah. That's why I just keep taking everybody.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to announce that we will start the Lakeland Heights Area School District School Board meeting in August 17th. It is currently 6:22. I'd like to apologize for the delay in the start of this meeting due to a prolonged executive session. Thank you for attending. I'd like to start out with the Pledge of Allegiance. Would everyone stand?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hi. Sorry.
No worries. All right, Mrs. Roll call, please.
Mr. Beaver?
Here.
Dr. Carter?
Here.
Mrs. Eisenman? Here. Mrs. Henry? Here. Mrs. Hume? Here. Mr. Sheets?
Here.
Mr. Weiderman?
Here.
Mrs. Walter? Here. Mr. Tomasi?
Here.
I'm present.
So first thing on the agenda is just a recognition. We'd like to thank the Reading Humane Society for their donations of pet supplies for our school district families. They were able to supply 2 pallets, full pallets of pet supplies to our families during the summertime. We had, kind of goes on with the secondary thank you, we had our food service staff doing food meals for our students throughout the entire summer. We had 200 plus students coming on a daily basis to get that food. And as an additional outreach, we're able to partner with the Humane Society to be able to have some pet supply food available for the families to take advantage of. So it was a great community effort to support our families and the pets that they might have during this tough economic time. So again, huge thank you to the Humane Society for their support during this time to our community.
Okay, I'd like to announce that we have a presentation. We have with us this evening Mr. Scott Kramer, Managing Director of RBC Capital Markets.
So Mr. Kramer will be presenting board members. I'm going to ask that we leave our spots and go down to the front. We're going to leave the microphone where it is this time so we don't have another issue with back on the last meeting. But Mr. Kramer is here to talk about potential loan borrowing as we look to do the final phase of the construction project here in the city.
Yeah, sure. So while we're waiting for the presentation to come up on the screen, by way of a little bit. While we're waiting for the presentation to come up on the screen, by way of a little
That's good, man. Can we do it without that mic?
I can, if you can hear me, okay?
Yeah, you can just project.
Sounds great. So by way of background, we did part of the financing last year with the anticipated timeline that we would come back this year to finish up the financing for the projects, as the superintendent mentioned. So Greg, if you want to go to the next slide, there we go. I don't need to stand up here and tell you about interest rates. Clearly, since March, we've had a significant decline in interest rates. The far right-hand portion of this chart shows you that we're back to historical lows with respect to interest rates. The next chart kind of blows up that blue box. And you can see in March, when the pandemic first hit, March through April and May, we saw a pretty significant spike in interest rates. And they've now come back to the low levels that we saw, and actually lower than what we saw pre-COVID-19. So the timing for the refinancing and borrowing for the new capital projects is very favorable. Again, taking advantage of interest rates we haven't seen in our lifetimes. So this slide represents a summary of the existing school district debt service before we do anything. The top columns 1 through 5 show you that we have a series of 2014 shaded in yellow that we're going to refinance. And then the other 3 pieces of the district's outstanding debt, which is the far right-hand column. They're paying about $2.5 million a year in annual debt service before reimbursement. Kind of the middle of the page takes into account the reimbursement that you receive. That's called your net debt service. And so on a net basis, after you receive a little bit of state aid from PDE, your net debt service is called about $2,383,000 on a net basis. The nice thing about this debt profile that we've talked about many times is the district's existing debt profile is very short. If you do nothing, the district would be out of debt in 2029. Just like your home mortgage, go out and borrow money for a new house, generally go 20, 25, or 30 years. Here, your remaining debt service is very short, less than 10 years. And so that sets you up very nicely to take advantage of very low interest rates in the short term, but also to allow you to restructure to make room for that new debt for very little impact to the tax base, which is the goal of the equation here. So the next couple of slides we've been talking about add a couple of different scenarios of new money. This is the $5 million of additional cash for projects. What we've seen since March, the market, as you saw in the interest rate chart, kind of had a huge disruption where the bond market wasn't functioning, the banks were no longer lending, and so it took some time over the last 4 months or so to have the bond market settle out, but to have the banks come back into having interest in making loans. And so what we're talking about is going to, there are 2 banks in particular that have been very aggressive with their fixed rates. What we see here is a bank loan at a rate of 1.25% fixed for the term, and it would be prepaid running time without penalty. That's the kind of low rates that we're seeing. So you can clearly see it's to your advantage of taking advantage of these low rates. So we're, just like we did on the last financing, we're wrapping the new debt service in column 4 around your existing debt service. Column 2, we're going to refinance about $2.3 million of the 2014 notes for a little bit of savings. It's helping pay the cost of issuance. And so for the board members, this $5 million option comes with about a $66,000 impact to budget, that far right-hand column. The first year, there's a little bit of savings. The next year, the debt service goes up by about $47,000, and then it goes up to about $66,000. So that's the impact to keep your debt service level in column 5 at the box that's surrounded in red there at a roughly $2,450,000 run rate. So this is the $5 million scenario. If we want to jump to The $4.5 million scenario, obviously not as expensive. The impact in column 6 drops to about $60,000 in those out years. And then the $4 million scenario, which is the last slide, the impact here is about $55,000. So all very attractive in terms of your ability to pay them back. It's very short. In this scenario, you can see that the debt service only still runs out 10 years at its longest. 2031 is on a $5 million scenario, so it's still a very, very short term. So that will set you up nicely to, God forbid, refinance if we see lower rates down the road. I'm not sure we'll see that. I've said that 100 times here. But if you want to do other things down the road, your existing debt profile, you've not backed yourself into any corners. Your debt profile is still going to be very short. You're going to maintain that good rating that we've always talked about. And so it's a very, very good setup. We do have an interest rate, or a timetable in the back that kind of talks about the next steps, if you will. Because it's a bank loan, we can move pretty quickly. We would anticipate, if you want to move forward with any of those scenarios, to come back at the meeting in September and put in place that parameters resolution that we've done many times here before. That would allow us to file the paperwork with Harrisburg that we need to file. We would put out an RFP to the banks, not only to the 2 banks that have been the most aggressive, to all the others to see what their interest might be. And then sometime in October, if that timing works, we would bring a commitment letter back where you can lock in that rate, whatever we see from the banks, 1.25% or thereabouts. So that's what we were here to talk about this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know I threw a lot at everybody here in a very short amount of time, but it's obviously good news to take advantage of the low rates to finish the projects.
Maybe I'll on. I started a couple of years ago at this point. So we did the original issuance of $10 million of new money, which generated about $700,000 of savings in our annual operating budget. So that's $700,000 every year that we're saving in our budget, taking advantage of those interest rate savings. This was always kind of the plan for that second borrowing. And with the interest rates that Mr. Kramer just spoke about, originally in the plan would be to borrow $4 million, but given the extremely favorable interest rates, we asked him to look at the $5 million scenario as well. And that actual impact of about, roughly $60,000 to the ongoing operating budget is less than what we were estimating a couple of years ago. The $4 million cost us. We were close to $100,000 a year estimated to feel the differences between those 3 different scenarios.
Craig, out of those numbers, which one do you, as a business manager, prefer out of the 4, 4.5, and 5?
Well, I think, as we've talked, for the second borrowing, we have a lot of things on the wish list that we'd like to do around the district. We haven't locked in to any particular project at this time. I don't think we'd have a hard time spending the $5 million and, interest rates the way they are. We did delay this decision based on, the pandemic and, trying to balance this year's budget. So we kind of deferred basically a budget cycle for taking on the additional debt. If I get out my crystal ball and say, are we going to be constrained on the revenue side and can we afford this? I mean, really to get, the $5 million at an interest rate like that, I'd say we have to budget,
And did I understand that the $5 million is going to be more cost effective than the $4 million was with what we were anticipating?
Correct. So the
So
$5 million would cost us about $65,000 a year in repayments.
$30,000 less than what you were projecting.
A year and a half ago, we were anticipating that to be close to $100,000. So when we 2 years ago started on this journey, when we looked at everything, we would have been borrowing $14 million. Now we're suggesting to borrow $15 million, and we're actually, in terms of the impact on the budget, it's less.
Craig, you mentioned that based on the timeline here, we wouldn't lock in theoretically until October 9th, correct? Is that what I'm reading up there?
Yeah, so we would come back, we can move quickly if you want us to keep the process moving, and we could get an RFP out, and be able to act on it at the September meeting, if you wanted us to. This was kind of just a rough timetable. I don't know that rates are gonna get away from us in the next 60 days, but again, 1.25 is awesome. If we can get it, we should try and take advantage of it. So, and let me say this, you don't have to pick the 4, 4.5, or 5 tonight. We can send out an RFP asking for 5. And if you decide it's 4 or 4.5, no harm, no foul. And we can do the parameters resolution with the maximum amount as well, so that when we actually lock it in, we can do any of those scenarios as well. So we can work with bond counsel on making it as flexible as you want it to be. And if the board's pleasure is that you want to move forward now and get that RFP on the street, we certainly can get it sent out in the next few weeks and have it probably, well, as we sit here, it's August. We probably could have it back for your September 14th meeting. That was the board's pleasure, yeah. Otherwise, waiting a month probably won't hurt us either.
Just to be clear, the term that we're talking about, I heard debt currently is scheduled to lapse in 2029. I also heard something about 2031. Can you just clarify? Make sure we understand.
Yeah, so right now, your current debt runs out to 2029. There's a little bit of maturity in 2029. The $5 million scenario, which is the longest of the scenarios, runs out to 2031. But if you chose one of the smaller 4.5 or 4, it actually, I'm sorry, they all go. The $4 million scenario only goes out to 30. So the $5 million you can extend one more year.
Okay. So that's important, based on the earlier comment about how borrowing $5 million is actually costing us less than what we thought a year or so ago, borrowing $4 million would cost in terms of the budget. But we also do need to acknowledge that we'd be extending the term of that debt
1 year.
from 2030 to 2031.
That's right.
It would still be a savings because we're extending it no matter what, at least 1 year. So that's 30,000. It would still be a savings. It wouldn't just be as much, it would.
Yes. So I think where you're going with it is,
So it'd be-
you're extending a year, you're still on a cash flow basis and a total payback basis, it's less than what we had envisioned before, because rates have fallen that far. The only difference is you're going out 1 more year to get the additional principal out there. But yes, the total, from a cash flow perspective and a overall total interest perspective, it's lower than what we had anticipated.
And again, I know nobody has a crystal ball, and particularly this year, it seems to be crazier than ever, but I hear, if I understand correctly, it's your notion that really waiting the next month or two as we get closer to October, you don't anticipate any major fluctuation. I'm just thinking in terms of closer to the election in November, it may get even more haywire than it is now.
So,
Meaning unpredictable.
yeah, yes, I would say unpredictable. The bank market, I would say, has not, in particular, the short part of the yield curve. Where we've seen movement is in the last 30 days, 30 and 40-year interest rates have gone up 20 basis points. That's not a lot, it's 0.2, but it's a meaningful movement. Whereas the short end of the yield curve, years 1 through 10, has not really moved at all. That will mirror more of what the expectations are for long-term inflation. That's why the long end yield curve is going up. Short end will react to, is the Fed going to do anything with interest rates? And that's not going to happen. Long-winded answer to your question, but I don't suspect that you will see a material change to the 1.25 in the next 30 to 60 days.
Material up or down.
Material up or down. But that's the best we've seen. The IU is going to take advantage of this. Twin Valley is in a very similar situation in terms of refinancing a very short piece of debt with the same bank. And that rate has bounced around in 10 to 15 basis point moves, but not 100 basis points. It's going to be a reason why you would say, well, we're not going to do it. You might see that November 15th.
So I guess the question now, Mr. Kramer moving forward is, do we want to follow the time schedule that was outlined? And if you don't mind just looking at that real quick, or do you want to, as Mr. Kramer outlined, maybe Mr. Kramer, you could just rehash that again for us, but
Yeah,
what
so,
would be the expedited timeline?
yes, if the board's pleasure is, hey, let's take advantage of the rates, we're all kind of in agreement, whether it's 4.5 or 5 million, why not go ahead and get the RFP out there in the next couple of weeks? We're happy to do that with a roll call vote of the board, say, yeah, go ahead, we want to get moving. And then we would come back to the meeting on the 14th of September with hopefully an interest rate agreement from the local bank and the parameters resolution that would allow us to take all the necessary action and file with Harrisburg. Then you would close from that date, still 30 days later, but you would have locked in your rate a little sooner. And we're fine with moving that timetable up by 30 days if that's your pleasure.
I'm in.
I agree, I'm in.
Yeah, I would definitely support moving aggressively. I mean, to be able to borrow $5 million at 1.25 is, as you said, unprecedented and historically good. So let's jump on the opportunity.
Yeah. This is not it, that tells you.
Do we have the capacity internally, like on the admin team, to add yet another project aggressively to our plate right now? That to me would be the only concern with moving the time frame up 30 days.
Yeah, we would definitely make.
You're right, you have 3 years to spend on.
Work 18 hours instead of 16 hours a day.
I appreciate that consideration. I think it's one of those situations where you almost have to add that to the plate just because of the long-term net impact to the school district. So I absolutely appreciate that consideration, though. Thank you.
Great. We'll see you around.
I got no room for this, huh?
Okay, moving on to revenue number 1, the director's report. Can I have a motion to approve the items
So
under
moved.
the board director's report? Let me finish. All right, so we have Mr. Bieber, or is he first?
Sure.
Mr. Sheets, second.
Are we pulling out E?
Would you like to vote on board of directors separately?
Correct.
Yes.
So we will be voting on board of directors, number 1, letter E separately.
Okay, so to walk us through the board of directors report, we have the dispensing of the minutes. There are 2 sets of minutes, one from our last scheduled board meeting, which was June 15th, and then another set of minutes from the August 3rd meeting. Are there any concerns with the minutes? If not, they will be officially recorded after the vote this evening. The second, letter C, the second item is to approve the second reading of our two board policies, board policy 249 and board policy 824. 249 is recommended to be eliminated and being replaced by 824. Just as a recap on this from what we had talked about in June, this is the PSBA recommendation for professional adults and student interactions policy. This is an updated policy that PSBA, who helps us with policy writing, has given to us. Again, we presented this in June, so you voted on it this evening. We'll codify it and make it our official board policy moving forward. The other one is an addition, is a new policy. There was some discussion this summer with our board policies, and the board policy 200, which is our enrollment of students. We came across a unique circumstance where we had our kindergarten students that were enrolling. And when we do kindergarten enrollment, we actually start that way back in January, and then it kind of trickles itself through the summer, through paperwork collection and those sorts of things. So we wanted to codify, when does it actually become the time when a kindergarten student becomes an enrolled student? And because we have enrollment, from January all the way up to the first day of school, but before the first day of school, it wasn't a consistent timeline. So I felt it was best to have the first day of school be the official kindergarten timeline for starting school. And so the new wording in the policy is, however, for kindergarten students, once a student is enrolled in kindergarten, they obtain all the rights under the school code and are to follow all the laws, including attendance. And the reason that's important to codify is there's times when a parent might decide that they enroll their child and they decide, they're not quite ready maturation-wise, or something happens, and so they choose to hold them back a year, which is completely acceptable and understandable from the child development side. But we have to draw a line in the sand of when you become an enrolled student. So once you start school, that official first day, you are then a registered grade 1 student, and you could not then withdraw. So we want to make sure that was clearly defined. It wasn't clearly defined before, but now by adding this into policy, that's essentially what we're doing this evening with this recommendation. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So the final item is the letter E, and that is to discuss our to approve the updated health and safety plan. We also have a Pennsylvania Department of Education instructional time template. At the meeting last meeting, August 3rd, you approved the health and safety plan, and you also approved the resolution to allow us to operate in emergency situations, which we currently are. We need to submit a timeline schedule of instructional hours and minutes to the Department of Education. So that's the PD instructional time template. In regards to the health and safety plan, as you recall, and for the edification of those on the call here today, we are operating in yellow, which is a hybrid plan. The way the hybrid plan will work is that half our students will come in on Monday, Tuesday, and then the other half of the students on the Monday, Tuesday will be working remotely. Our staff are going to be teaching the students in the morning. They'll have a break, and then in the afternoon, doing live sessions with our students in the afternoon. What we really felt was important was that our staff had constant connections with our students every day. We really felt that was a critical component of this plan. On Wednesdays, the staff will have time to do some work in the morning, do some collaboration time amongst each other, and then in the afternoon, again, we'll be doing that consistent afternoon time schedule with live sessions for students in the afternoon. And then on Thursday and Friday, we'll flip the model. Those that were online Monday, Tuesday in the afternoon will now be in person in the morning, and vice versa. Those that were in person Monday, Tuesday will now be online in the afternoon. So that is the schedule. We have outlined that schedule and exactly what that schedule means by grade level in our reopening back to school presentation website. So and just as a reminder, that website is on our school district website. It says reopening, you click the reopening, and then there's an education tab, and it'll go through all those details, exact times for when students are going to be doing live sessions in the afternoon. All that is outlined there. We'll also be sending, I know the building principals have been sending communication out to parents the last few weeks, but we'll be sending another one out tomorrow with updates with all this information to our families as well. So that's a update of where we are in terms of what the yellow plan looks like. I'd just like to give the board some additional updates of where we are with the plans. All along, we've mentioned that we have an option for any family that's not comfortable to go do a fully virtual option. That still exists. We have 275 students that originally expressed interest in the online platform, which equates to us with our enrollment at 19.6% of the student body. Dr. Reese, our special education pupil services director, went through those students and worked with our special education families to better meet their IEPs and found some other ways to accommodate their needs. And so when it was all said and done, we basically have 225 students that are opting for a online, fully virtual environment. And so that equates to about the 16% number of our number of students that are electing to go completely virtual. And we understand that this is a good option for our families that might be concerned, might have health concerns and those sort of things. So we're going to continue to offer that. We think that's a really critical part of this plan as we do about our families' other options.
Mr. Parker, do you happen to have that data by building, like by elementary, intermediate, middle, and high school?
It's in the enrollment, because it's virtual.
It-
And some people are virtual.
Yeah, I don't have that right in front of me, but in the enrollment report is broken down in the enrollment report for the school district. I don't have that. I don't have those stats in front of me, though. I'm sorry.
I'm talking about the 225 that have opted to go virtual, is that?
That's not reflected on enrollment yet.
It actually is, yeah.
Really?
How many?
Then I'll go
Right,
ahead.
that's
Well, so
historic
then-
information, that's not the
What's that?
same as what you're talking about here, or is it?
So there's 74 students that are in the elementary school, 32 in the intermediate school, 42 in the middle school, and 87 in the high school.
So the August enrollment report reflects the survey, the recent survey data, that's really what I'm trying to ask.
It does.
Okay.
Mrs. Honish updated that today.
And were there any significant shifts or anything of note that you want to point out to us or that we should be aware of?
Just what I noted earlier, that Dr. Reese has worked with our special education students, and so we were able to accommodate those students a little bit different than the normal pathway. And that went from 275 down to that 225 now.
Okay.
Are there any other schools that can use our Brandywine Virtual Academy? Are there any schools in partnership with that can use that?
At this point, no, it's just our students.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. And do we,
Because we get into an issue with enrolled students, with Brandywine enrolled students versus at different schools. So they have to do a tuition piece.
Right. Do we envision any kind of problem with that, so to say, maybe crashing with the influx of the amount of students that are going to be using it as opposed to past years?
I'm not, quite honestly, because the partnership company that we've been partnered with for a while is Edgenuity. And that company had actually opened up their platform to the entire state in the spring.
Okay,
And so that was a huge flux of individuals coming into the system. And, we were able to still maintain our processes, our systems throughout that entire time. So now that we're starting the new school year, school districts may or may not have been doing this. The difference between now and the spring is the state offered that completely free to all the school districts. And now it's a little bit different because now school districts have to decide and purchase the free.
and have we considered possibly getting Mrs. Honich any kind of help with the influx of students she's gonna have to now take control of?
So we're carefully monitoring that. I appreciate you bringing that up. We're really carefully monitoring that because it is a big addition in terms of the number of students.
Right.
I've been checking with her on a daily basis right now. She's managing, like her building principals and everyone else, but it's something that we are very cognizant of.
Because if I remember last year, we had, like 120, and most of them were part-time, and now we're going to, 230 to 250 full-on schedules.
Yeah, and it's Mrs. Holland and an administrative assistant that works with her.
Ms. Rapp.
It looks like at least in like the elementary and intermediate, it looks like
numbers for each grade is like a class. Like they're right around 20-ish kids. Would it make sense to take just one of the in-class teachers and have all the virtual kids be in class?
That's what we did at the elementary school. We were able to, there was a few staff members that expressed interest in working virtually. So we were able to take those staff members and have them work with those students, and then where applicable, we're able to reduce the class size. If we didn't need to, we left it where it was so that our numbers still remain lower.
Yeah, so that seems like it'll be a help.
So from a transportation lens, the other piece we had done was send a survey out to our families about offering if parents were able to drive their children to school on a regular basis. And we had 200 parents approximately that had expressed interest in that. And so that helped us with bus routing, which we're working through currently. That bus routing information will be released this week as well. And so I just pause there and say a lot of the things that we had done since the August 3rd meeting, which was the online survey and transportation survey, were predicated then on a lot of follow-up factors. So, what does our class list look like? Because of the number of enrollments of online students, of course, that shifted schedules and class lists and things like that. Number of parents that are wanting transportation, obviously that then adjusted busing and how many buses we need and all those other things. So we did add a BCTC mid-morning and afternoon bus run. So BCTC currently is planning to go back full time. As we're in a hybrid plan, so we felt it was really important to accommodate our BCTC students and find a way to get them to the high school so they could take the BCTC bus then for their program, and then vice versa when they came home, find a way to transport them home. So we are adding a BCTC mid-morning run, and then likewise, because we're in a hybrid plan, our hybrid plan for kindergarten is a little bit different. We have kindergarten kids split up, the classroom split up where half the kids are in the morning and half the kids are in the afternoon. So again, we wanted to make sure that our parents and our students were taken care of. So we added a midday kindergarten transportation run to take the morning students home and pick up the afternoon students. So those two things were added on the transportation lens as we looked at kind of balancing out the transportation options for our families. That's where we are with transportation. Last board meeting, we had talked, and Mr. Sheets and Mr. Bieber, you had talked to me about temperature checks. And is there a way that we can consider doing temperature checks? And what would that look like? And I said, let me dig into that. I'll come back with a proposal. So while we looked into it, and the CDC still says, temperature checks aren't necessarily a great gauge onto is this COVID or not. I think the point that two of you had made was whether it's a COVID case or it's just an illness case, if it's a temperature over 100, there's probably some kind of concern that we don't want them exposing other students again, whether that's COVID or just a regular illness. So we took that to heart, and what we came up with was the temperature checks is kind of a two-phase process. What I'm recommending this evening to the board is that we would be doing temperature checks. And the process would be is that when we did the buses, we have staff members on the bus. So before a student even got on the bus, we would do a temperature check before they entered the bus. And then we would be able to determine if they were okay or not. In some circumstances, to be completely honest, if there is a temperature and we identify a temperature, we may have to put that student on the bus and get them to school because there might not be a parent to be able to say, you're not able to come to school right now. Conversely, if we weren't doing temperature checks at all, that student would be on the bus anyway. So we can make some accommodations, make sure the masks are on, that sort of thing. So we'll be doing temperature checks on the bus before they even enter the bus. And then for all the other students, we'll also be at the points of entry for each building, having staff members do temperature checks before they come into the building, just to make sure everyone is okay before they enter. And then, of course, if there is an instance, we would escort that person immediately down to the nurse, and we would contact home and deal it from there like any normal concern of a case of flu, or if it's COVID, a different case. So that would be my recommendation and an update to the health and safety plan this evening as we look at temperature checks and what we would be doing with temperature checks.
So before we jump to the next one, can we ask a couple of quick questions?
Sure, yeah, please.
Okay, so.
Sorry, I'm rapid firing on my list here, trying to give updates of everything. I apologize.
Understand, some of it's new to us.
Yeah.
So temp checks for all students, whether they board a bus or whenever they enter the building. What about visitors? What about staff members? Meaning faculty and staff, adults.
So for our staff members and our children, for that is, we're still asking them to do the self-administered wellness check every morning. So that will still be in place, and then we're adding the extra layer of temperature checks for our students. And then for visitors, we'll also be doing the temperature checks, but we were not planning to do any temperature checks for our staff. It was going to be for our students before they came in, as well as visitors coming in the building.
Okay. All right, thank you.
An update on face masks. I know we had a conversation about that last board meeting. Mrs. Wells, I know you brought up some points about shields and those sort of things. So as of like this afternoon, we received. It seems like things are just constantly changing, and this is a major change, but it's just another wrinkle in the plan. So PDE came out with a new guidance. They're using some additional national guidance to help guide what they're recommending to school districts. So they basically, the two things they did today was more narrowly define what a face mask is, and then also put in some restrictions on what mask breaks can entail. So as a high level overview, face shields are acceptable, but they have to cover the nose and the mouth as part of the new guidance from the state. So that's a little bit of a change and a little bit of clarity of what the face shield would entail. Of course, the cloth coverings is what they're encouraging, what they're recommending, but they said face shields are okay as long as they cover the nose and the mouth. And then the breaks, breaks can be taken, mask breaks can be taken for when you're eating or drinking, or when students are 6 feet apart. But the caveat is it can't be longer than 10 minutes. So after 10 minutes, you have to put the mask back on, or whatever it is. So that is the new guidance that came out from the Department of Education that, of course, we would have to follow. But that is the update on where we are with face masks.
What is our responsibility for, I guess this is for a recommendation? Like, is that something we have to do, a recommendation? Is that a requirement? What's the difference between a requirement, a mandate, and a recommendation?
Great question. The recommendation is just we've seen a number of those from the state, and that's just for you to use as guidance. He is stating that you can make the local decision on how you want to proceed in that fashion, and that's on a number of issues that he's dealing with right now. Instead of the state enforcing, he's allowing you to make that decision. So if it's a recommendation, you're not required to do it. If it's an order, obviously that's something you have to follow.
So with these masks, we don't have to make they can sit at a desk doing work 6 feet away, and we could be okay with, we wouldn't be mandated to make them do that.
So the guidance that came out today says Department of Health is requiring students wear masks at all times while in school. That's the word. So, from a local control perspective, it does limit us what we're able to do.
It's just so hard. It's so hard. These little kids. I mean, I can speak on the little kids. That's just where I am in my life. But to make these kids sit there, they can't keep their hands off them, and it's so hard. I understand, and there should be times when they're sitting that they can get 10 minutes. Like there's nothing that shows that these kids are not going to be affected. There's no study out there that shows them. It's so discouraging as a parent to know that my kid has to sit there with a mask on all day.
So I am meeting with the staff tomorrow. And we'll be going through a lot of these things here. Any outcomes from the board meeting tonight, of course, I'll be sharing with the staff. But one of the things I already have in the presentation is the mask component of it. And I am encouraging staff members as they see fit. Of course, they're going to have to read the class, and there's, they don't just put anything hard on stone, but to either take the kids out to large group areas like a gym or an auditorium, or take them outside and have students go outside and do your learning outside for the day if it's nice weather. We're limited on that, of course, until we get colder weather, but it gives us an opportunity to spread out a little bit, to change the scenery, and then, of course, take the masks off for that 10-minute period of time. So we're trying to emphasize that and encourage that with our staff members so that they do know that they have the attitude to move, pick up the class, go somewhere else, go outside if they feel comfortable to do so.
And this is stating that it is important to be effective immediately. So it has to be implemented into our plan.
Thank you.
So, and just to be clear, students are in our buildings 2 days a week for half a day.
That's
And
correct.
it's an early dismissal half a day,
Yes.
which means for, and it might vary from elementary to high school, but several hours. Help me, 2, 3,
For approximately 4.5. So high school students, 7:30 to 12.
okay.
Yeah.
So for 4.5 hours, 2 mornings per week, the expectation is if you send your child to school, he or she will need to honor the requirement to wear a mask. If they are unable or unwilling to comply with that, then the parent should not send their child to school.
That's correct, yes. So we're looking at masks, not as a disciplinary issue, but more as an attire issue. So just like you can't come to school without a shirt on, because of this order, we have to enforce it, so you have to wear a mask just like you do a t-shirt coming into school. So yeah, if you're not able to do so, we'll ask that the parent comes. Of course, we'll offer one to the student, encourage them to put it on, work with the family the best we can. But if they are not willing to do so, then we can't have them in the school building based off of the order. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, for my understanding is we could go stricter, but we can't go less aggressive than what the order dictates.
Yes.
Okay. But our plan, even before this order, was to require masks all of the time in our buildings.
Yes.
If you can't be consistently 6 feet apart
The
for an
difference
extended
was we had a
period.
little bit more latitude on the mask breaks compared to where we are now.
They were allowed to sit at their desk and do work and not have to wear that if everyone was
safe.
spaced out. And now
And then,
But to be fair, we are on a hybrid plan, from what I'm understanding, we're gonna do everything to space kids out 6 feet because of the fact that only potentially half the class would be in a location. But now that this mandate order is out there, the mask is required all the time.
That is correct.
So that changes.
It does change things, yeah.
and as a result of that, we may see a change in our numbers in terms of virtual or in class that we just received.
Right.
That data may shift once that new information is conveyed to the community. I mean, we just heard about it today, right? You just got it from Pennsylvania Department of Education today.
That's correct.
Do you have the wording, Andrew? Does it say there exactly what that mandate says?
So I got it at 2:22 today. It's a whole. So the main wording in the email paragraph is the partner DOH is requiring students wear face coverings at all times while in school, even when 6 feet of social distancing can be achieved. There are limited exceptions. That's what the email says.
Limited exceptions.
So the limited exceptions that lead you to an FAQ, which is multiple pages. I don't think you want me to read all this, but the multiple under what circumstances are students permitted to remove their face coverings? Schools may allow students to remove face coverings when students are eating or drinking when spaced at least 6 feet apart, or when wearing a mask covering creates an unsafe condition in which to operate equipment or execute a task, or at least 6 feet apart during face covering breaks, quote unquote, to last no longer than 10 minutes.
So can we do 10-minute breaks with a 1 minute on over and over again? Does it limit that?
It does not limit that. That's what it's saying.
And in terms of the recommendation and encouragement of our staff to stretch the boundaries of the classroom beyond the four walls of the building, are we doing anything to accommodate those kinds of creative approaches? I know some schools have gotten tents, and there's talks about tent classrooms and all that kind of stuff. Like what, do we have any plans in place for that, or is it just up to the teacher to go find a spot to sit in the grass?
We've really left it up to the staff member to determine that, knowing that it's going to be, while we want this to go as long as possible, it is a fairly short window of time in terms of what the weather will be conducive to be able to do this. The nice part is, particularly here with this building, we do have a nice pavilion in the back. There's also some areas like this, the bleacher areas, the large grass areas. We actually have some nice facilities where they can spread out large flatter areas of grass or even some bank areas that would be really nice for construction.
Yeah, and keep in mind, I mean, they're really, our average class size is less than 25. They're gonna have 12 kids. They're gonna have 12 kids, so there should be ample space to find anywhere outside, if they so choose to.
Okay, but no like sign out process, like, hey, I've got the pavilion from 9 to 10. What if 4 teachers bring their 12 kids to the pavilion from 9 to 10? We'll just deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna ask the staff to be flexible, and you see a step, just like you would do normally if you see a staff member, but you make accommodations and you move those across. Again, that's the nice part about our facilities, because we do have a lot of open space that it's easy to accommodate and make those changes. But, so, for instance, like here, if you see someone in the pavilion, well, there's a nice bank area to the right, there's a nice bank area to the left of the building in the back. So it does allow for quick changes.
And in the grades where the kids change classes, they go from class to class to class, particularly at the high school, but probably the upper grades here at the middle school. What is the length of the classes? Like, how is the daily schedule? Typically, there's 8 courses or more a day. What does a day look like for those kids and teachers?
I don't have them committed to memory, I apologize. But rough numbers, just to back up the numbers, we're gonna have students in the middle school staying in their homeroom, and then the teachers will rotate around. In high school, obviously, it's a little different because the students take different courses. Because they take different courses, then they're moving around to different areas. But the rough numbers are 30 minutes per period in the middle school and high school. And then in the afternoon, instruction is 15 minutes per period.
Okay, but as it relates to the topic of you're in the building, you want to go outside so that people can take a mass break, so to speak, or get a new venue to study in, it's a 30-minute class. So 5 minutes to get outside and situated, 5 minutes to get back inside. So you're talking about roughly 20 minutes of instruction in whatever new venue you, as a staff member, can find to make it fun for your kids.
It would take away some of the educational time, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions on that topic before I move forward? Now we get into two, you thought that was difficult. Now we get into two more harder.
Real quick, just to be, there is a, on the website, on the BHASD website, there is a reopening plan. And if you piece through that, you can find, Liz, like all the information about classes, time frame, that's all spelled out here. And I think you're really at a point of that tomorrow or early this week, you're gonna remind folks that they can find this information.
That's correct.
Is that,
Yeah.
I heard you say?
We're sending that out to families, but it also is live right now. So if you go on the left-hand side, there's an education tab, and that's where all that information is.
Okay, I'm really asking if it's impacted at all by this most recent news and update. So far, flat forward. Okay.
So 2 more topics that we need to wrestle with a little bit more as a board. This is where I need a little bit of guidance. So the first one is the metrics. So when we approved the plan on August 3rd, there was not guidance or metrics that came off of the Department of Education, Department of Health, or any state agency. So if you recall, when we approved the health and safety plan, we recommended using the number of cases per 100,000 as our threshold for what phase we're going to be operating in. And so at the board meeting, we used the 50 to 100,000 because that was the threshold that the state had originally used to move us from all the counties in red to going to yellow. And so once you hit the less than 50 per 100,000, then counties started to open up and we started going yellow. The state never defined what green metrics were. So when we discussed at the board meeting, we decided that we would use a 25 per 100,000. Shortly after the board meeting, well, last two weeks ago, I say this now, the Department of Education did release metrics to us. And so the metrics are, the good news is one, the metrics that we adopted are very close in line with what the state did. So the state said use county data. We decided to use county data. The state said, look at this on a 2-week period because you want to make sure you have some consistency. We had ours built on a 2-week period. And then they said, use the parts per 100,000. We had done that. So I felt really good about what I presented to the board. I thought that was a good, what you as board members committed to. I thought that was a good plan. The data metrics are a little bit different though. Again, we were at 25 to 50 for the yellow phase, and then essentially 0 to 25 for green, and then over 50 was our red. The state's saying anything now from 10 to 100 is the yellow. So 0 to 10 would be green. 11 to 100 would be yellow, and then anything over 100 cases would be going to red or full virtual. So I bring that to the board this evening to say we have a little bit of a disparity in terms of what we identified as numbers. Again, our numbers are, if we focus just on yellow, 25 to 50, and the state's saying 0 to 10 to 100, 10 to 100. My recommendation would be to adopt the lower end of that with the green, the 10 number, and then maintain the 50 number. We talked with some of our medical professionals, and they have still used that 50 as the gauge, which is what we are having, but the state does have 100 in there. So you have complete, this is more of a guideline. If this is not an order, this is not a mandate, this is absolutely a guideline. But it does at least give us some discussion points of what do we want to adopt here. Again, I'm recommending that we use the 10 to the 50. We need to hash that out. And then as a secondary question to the board, what if we use the 50 number, knowing the state's at 100, and let's just say there's 51% or 51 cases per 100,000 over a 2-week period, what then? What's the guidance that you as board members would like to give me? Deeper question. As board members, do you want to make that operational decision, or do you want me, the administration, to make those decisions using the data points? And then a further question, is it easier to make decisions? I know one of the concerns that I think Mr. Wagner and Mr. Beaver, you brought up last time was it's hard to say for families to go in and out, in and out, in and out. Do we want to make decisions based off of a month at a time? And at a board meeting, look at the data and then make the decisions, whatever data metric we decide on, but make the educational decision 1 month at a time, short of some massive, outbreak that would occur. And we probably have to define what a massive outbreak is, but so I raised several questions there. One is the data metric, and then 2, a bunch of questions that really fall under one category of how do we apply the data metrics? Do you want to do it as a lump sum time? Do you want to do it as a 2-week period and use the hard fast, whatever number we pick? Or do we want some latitude in figuring out how we're going to do this?
I think we go by quarters or even by a month, only to move up in a phase, basically go from yellow to green. I say we set a number here, like say, we have 3 cases in the elementary school. We go, whatever that number may be, we set a number. And if the state isn't going to give it to us, we need to make that number up, whether we pull it out of the curtains or whatever. We need to set a number for If we get like 5 cases, we go completely virtual. I think there needs to be a metric for that. If we're gonna have a metric for what sets us for each phase, we need a metric for if we do have an outbreak or 2 or 3. I mean, we're a very small school district, and you know, the state's saying 100, whatever. I think that works for a bigger school district. A smaller school district like ourselves, I don't think so. Just my opinion, but I think we go by either a quarter or a month. And we set a number of what then will.
Well, the Department of Health has already determined what a district will do if there is so many cases in a school district.
See, those numbers are 100 per 100,000, not 100 for the school district.
Right.
Well, I mean, using that number, right, just doing some spitball math, right, so 100 per 100,000 works out to 1,000%. So if we apply that number to our student body, we'd be closing down if 1.394 students got COVID, right? So at the first COVID case, you know, we'd be closing it down. Just to kind of put in perspective, you know, from a number standpoint, you know, trying to apply regional numbers or state numbers might not necessarily work in our district. I think David's right. I think we do need to have an idea of when we're going to have that moment where we pull the trigger and we go red. But I don't know if we necessarily follow the, you know, like I said, like that national number.
That's what I'm saying. I'm agreeing with you 100%. We need to set that number because we are a smaller school district. I mean, I mean, like you said, the number comes out to 1.3. Do I think one case we shut down and go to red?
Well, Andrew sent out that link today that did have the breakdown of our school district. And right now there's 17.79 per 100,000 cases for Brandywine Heights School District. It did say based on some of the zip codes might have some of the other school districts in there, but you know, that's nowhere near what Berks is at 40, or are they at 7?
The other thing is, where are those cases coming from, right? So are those cases coming from, you know, healthy individuals? Are they coming from school-age students? Because a lot of the research being put out by CDC and WHO is saying that typically children have half the likelihood of getting the disorder. Or are those numbers coming from, you know, skilled nursing facilities and healthcare institutions, you know, in the more urbanized sections of our community? I mean, I really think that if we pick a number tonight, we're going to be pulling a number out of the air, right? If we leave it in the hands of our administrators, you know, I think that's something that we need to do. I don't think that. I think that meeting once a month and having the conversation of, okay, do we want to upgrade to a less stringent setting is a good thing, but I think that we need to make sure that our administrators have that immediate ability to just pull the trigger on when they need to shut school down.
So I'm hearing, thank you for that. And so let me, if I can just summarize kind of where we are. I hear that we should, in general terms, without massiveness, concern, but in general terms, let's look at this on a monthly basis when we come to a board meeting. I'll present the data points. Of course, on a weekly basis, I'll keep the board apprised of what data it is. But let's make decisions on a monthly basis using the guide. And then if there's cases of what I would, Mrs. Walton, I think you said something. Yeah. The PD has a guide for this, and I just pulled that out. So one case, you do not close. 2 to 4 cases, it's asked to close school for 3 to 5 days to do cleaning. And then if it's 5+ cases, it would be closing for 14 days. So that is definitely more of a concern. So that's how we would be looking to do something more serious in terms of, you know, closing, but then turns into that fully virtual until we would meet again for 14 days. But that's the PD guidelines for how to handle cases that might appear in a school setting. So I would suggest that if that's the PD guideline, that we would adopt.
Would you repeat those? Because I see this as 2 different issues. One is the decision to go back to school and how long to stay in school should there be changes to the data. At the community level, meaning Berks County, is what we've just defined, at least in the current health and safety plan, as our community. That's one issue. A second issue is, if in our buildings, we have some type of outbreak, however you define outbreak, but if we have an incidence of a student or staff member or visitor testing positive for COVID, what happens and how quickly and swiftly do we communicate that and do we react? So to me, two different issues. So in my head, I need to deal with them separately. You opened the discussion at the community level. So can we be clear about what we're gonna recommend for that before we move into what our recommendation is for our own buildings?
So what I'm hearing, just to, I appreciate, there are two separate issues. So the first one is, let's look at this at a month, let's use the data points.
So the recommendation for PDE was every 2 weeks. We're now saying we're only gonna adjust every month.
Come back to the board at a monthly board meeting, is what I'm hearing. Come back to the board at a monthly board meeting, use the data metrics. We still need to find data metrics, but use the data metrics to make that decision at a monthly board meeting.
Unless there's an outbreak.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
It's basically going from yellow to green,
Yes.
not yellow to red.
Yeah.
Because the yellow to red is it's not going to take a board meeting for him to determine that. That's gonna come from, like you just said, the direction of the PDE, which is if we have so many cases, we're shut down for 14 days, we're shut down for.
Right, I see us going from yellow to red 2 ways. One is if we have a local outbreak in our buildings. The other would be if countywide things skyrocket, we're a part of that county, and we're saying that if it gets bad enough in the county, even though here we might be pristine, we're still gonna do what makes sense to do at the county level.
That's correct.
Okay, so we're gonna make you're gonna make recommendations to the board on a monthly basis.
Based on
And-
data.
Yeah, and what does PDE say in terms of local, if there are cases diagnosed in our buildings, what?
I've got it up if you want. So it looks like it's actually split by what so the chart's set up two ways. It's set up the first way by what the total state or what your community, what the county is. So your county level being low, county level being moderate, county level being substantial. And then from there, it's based off of number of students or affected individuals. So one student or staff, there's no impact, right? You go to a 2 to 4 within a 14-day period, and I'm sorry, I forgot to specify, this is all within a 2-week period. 2 to 4 staff or greater or less than 5%, so number of students, staff, 5% students and staff in the building, or multiple school buildings with individual cases who are not household contacts. And you enter into, in the low area, you would enter into schools closed for 3 to 5 days, clean areas, public health staff with direct close contact quarantine. And then finally, the other one is if it's 5 or plus students or staff, 25% of total number of students, multiple school buildings with 2 to 4 cases who are not household contacts, we close for 14 days. Got to clean the entire school, and again, we need to get involved with the public health department. Jeez, you get that fast. I'm sorry. If I had coffee this evening, I'm a little loud.
So let me try to summarize this. So, data metrics, let me start there. That I was recommending is that we would change our data metric points to 0 to 10 for green, 11 to 50 for yellow, and then plus 50 for red. We would apply those data metrics on a monthly basis and have that discussion at a board meeting, at a regularly scheduled board meeting with recommendations of what the next educational plan would be at that board meeting with board of directors.
And Andrew, just a point of clarification. So we are going to be setting, so for our community, for our school district, we are actually going to be setting our red level 50 cases below what the state recommendation is. So we're actually going 50% more conservative than what the state guidelines actually dictate.
That's what we had originally, that's what I'm still recommending, but subject to conversation.
Okay.
Subject to
But I'm just
conversation.
making the point that we're being safer than what we have to be. We're playing it safer than what we have to be, correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay.
Just another quick thing, before you go on here. We have our board meeting. Say we are yellow, we're going to green. Our board meetings are typically Monday night. When will that green phase then start? Will it be the following week or the Tuesday the next day?
I think as a board will have to decide, I think all of us are very sensitive to not making a decision the next day. I think we would need to give parents ample time.
Yeah, I just wanted to, put it out there for the public, not that they think we're gonna roll them over and.
The next day,
One
say,
day.
okay, now all of a sudden tomorrow,
Yeah,
Tuesday,
right.
we're coming back. And the vice thing, the vice versa for going from yellow, and if we have, come to a monthly board meeting, it says 51 cases, and the board says, let's go virtual, red for the next month. We need to make sure that parents have a little bit of buffer time in there to do that. I think that's very important to do, quite honestly.
So going to red requires 0 lead time. We're saying if we want to go to green, then we need to give our family members and staff lead time for that. And I think last August 3rd, Mr. Bieber, you were arguing maybe even that lead time should be on a calendar quarter or on a marking period or on some like benchmark type time frame. So that if things start to trend favorably, that we can begin to loosen up and be less strict, that we would be able to sort of forecast that and then live through it a bit before D-Day, so to speak, right? Am I
Yep,
following
yep,
what?
Yep, that's the question I'm basically asking.
Yeah, I don't think it makes, I don't think it makes sense to plan on going to green in a tight time frame. To me, we need visibility into it, we need lead time into it, we need some roadway before we could do that. And I support Mr. Bieber's recommendation, and I thought this was kind of part of the existing plan, that we would only make that decision on like a quarterly marking period basis. Maybe I misremember or I didn't understand.
Right now, we at the August 3rd meeting said we're going to be hybrid until in the yellow phase for the first month of school. That's what we decided on. That's what I communicated after the meetings. Then
For the first month?
Yes.
Okay.
Then PD came in and gave these numbers, and that's why we're resurrecting this conversation again, because it changes the scenery of how do we adopt and apply these numbers.
Yeah, I mean, my bias would be to say you need at least 30 days lead time before you shift to a more favorable color phase. Less restrictive, thank you, less restrictive. That's a good way to say it, less restrictive.
So you're saying basically we come back in September, say we can go green. We should, for 30 days until the October meeting, stay yellow and see what happens and put it out to the families, hey, if it stays the way it is, all of September, October, we will be going green. Is that what you're saying?
In general, yes. I'm saying there needs to be a good 30-day window or, 3 to 4 week window before you just, because this data changes.
Yeah,
like
that's my
constantly.
point though, to a month though, you say a month, in that 30-day window, those numbers could skyrocket. So to set that month time frame, we could make that decision
With the
on.
data that we've had 3 weeks prior.
Yes, and then till we get to that point, we could be back in.
Well, we could say barring the data is still favorable.
Correct, but you're still going to be changing on the fly. I mean, I think that's the one thing that we have to come to grips with. There is very little planning you can do for that swing. It is going to be inconvenient, as this entire thing has been. So to say we're going to give a month notice, that's great. However, the week we decide that following week, those numbers could spike, and that's completely out of anything we could forecast. So I guess.
Right, but if it doesn't spike, if it stays favorable, then we continue to see a favorable trend line from the time we say, hey, the data looks like we could go to green, let's root for that, right? And then the following week, the data continues to look good, and the following week, and the following week. And so we've got this trend line before we push the green button in terms of implement a green strategy.
But in that scenario, 1 week can throw you off.
Correct. So I guess what I would suggest in that, if that's the approach the board wants to take, we do it on a marking period, because that's going to give you true data to make that swing. So if we come to the month prior to the end of that marking period, we now have had 2 months of data that will allow us to say, okay, we're comfortable saying that this data has held true for 2 months now, and we are going to go green that following month. So to make those decisions based on a marking period as opposed to a month.
I agree with that.
So the reason I suggested originally a month is I think David had suggested a month. My thought process was we have a board meeting every month.
Right.
To your point, if we decide to do it per quarter, we could, middle of the market, the end of the market period, it's fine in the head right now, but I believe it's the middle of October, I forget the exact date. So we could have that meeting conversation at the beginning of October, and that gives you almost a 2-week lead time before that quarter changes, to let parents know that, hey, we're gonna be shifting for this coming quarter to whatever it is.
So it's going to give us more steady data, more accurate data than, in my opinion.
So again, I think we're wrestling with 2 things though. One is, what do we do if there's cases here? And we have that plan from PD, and I think that articulates what we do there. The other issue then is, when I was doing it on a monthly basis, I would to move from green or to red from our current status was going to be a conversation point at the board meeting. So if we hit number 51 instead of 50, do you want me to make that change
Yes.
that day from 50? If you're going to hit
Yes.
number 51,
Yes.
to make that change.
Yes. When we go red, you make that on a dime, whatever you gotta do.
You don't want to wait till that board meeting.
No, I don't think we wait at all.
Okay, I needed to hear that, of what the guidance was from the board. At that 51 number, do we do it the next day?
We shut it down.
Yeah, I think you got it, just the same way we did it back in March. You know, it's take what you need home and that's that.
And if it goes out of 51 the next week, in 2 weeks, it goes back to 48, do we bring it back to hybrid then?
I
Not
think
until the
I-
next marking period.
So you want to keep it virtual for the whole park market period?
I disagree with that. Respectfully, I disagree with that. I think that if it does come out, at that point, I don't see a scenario where we're really going to be anything more than maybe a week or 2 away from a board meeting during any of these decision processes, because everything's based on 2 weeks of data. So I don't see us going, if we have one really bad week, like let's say, God forbid, the Lutheran home hits an outbreak, right? And they get 50 cases. And they manage to clear that. There's no new cases, but we still have that 2 weeks of data. We got to wait for that trailing data to drop off. We're only a week away from a board meeting, So I think that if we do it by the quarter, if we drop it for the entire quarter, we could have a spike from one skilled nursing facility in our area that causes us to cancel, to go red and go fully virtual for another, 4 weeks or 5 weeks.
Think about what happened in March. Isn't that exactly what happened in March? That there was outbreaks all over, not necessarily here, but all over. And it was scary enough back in March to shut it down. I'm not sure I understand
But back in
why
March-
it wouldn't be just as scary in our local, and even more scary in less than a mile away, in walking distance, in fact, if we had an outbreak of 50 COVID cases. What, I
So
just.
I guess
You're
the
talking-
difference is, right now, if we're operating at, let's just pick it up to 40. This week,
Right.
next week, it just for some reason jumps to 51.
Right.
We shut down.
Yeah.
We're gonna be ready. Next week, it was back to 40. So 2 weeks ago, we were fine operating at 40. But 2 weeks later, now we're saying it's not safe.
Are we gonna go off of like a more localized, our districts, or are we going off of all of Berks? Because
Going off of more folks.
We agreed last time to go off of Berks, that's the current plan, Berks County data. I mean, So I meant, that's what the plan approved on August
But we
third
can
was.
also adjust and.
Yeah, I'm
consider
just
it.
saying, okay, you're
But I
saying,
just
should we
feel like-
continue to do that?
Yeah,
or
so
should we
that's
do
my
something
question.
different?
I mean,
Okay.
when Andrew sent this out today, what was the purpose of you setting that up? Was that just,
It was
For
the first
nothing,
time we
or-
could see local data.
yeah, which is like
Which we
so
never-
different than what our county data is.
I think from,
But
I think that,
we don't live in a bubble. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just.
Yeah, but everybody's traveling right now anyway, going and playing sports, and they're all out there anyway. I mean, it would be to make these decisions based on our community that's already going out there. Why wouldn't we take our community members?
Well, we work in different locations, we travel, we go places. I mean, my point is, we're not in a bubble here in the greater
Yeah, but
area.
the people living in this bubble are not contracting. They're going out. My husband goes to work in another county, you know, like, and they're still going out to their spots. Everyone's still going on vacation. People are still playing sports with each other. And they're expanding in the bubble, but our numbers in our bubble are not growing, is what I mean. But the county numbers,
So
I
I,
feel like the county has a lot
We
of.
can also hold a special board meeting as long as we meet the advertising requirements to have said meeting. So, I mean, I trust in Mr. Pottinger to say, okay, this is concerning, these are concerning numbers, we shut it down, and those numbers then drop. We just have to advertise, we have a meeting, and we can make that decision as a board to come back. We don't have to stick to the one meeting a month. We could, during this, we could advertise that we have 2 meetings a month.
well, and realistically, we still have emergency powers enacted because we're still in the middle of the pandemic. We still have a state of emergency in Pennsylvania. So we could just advertise and have a Zoom meeting if we really needed to do something along those lines, or Google Meet or whatever, not, endorsing one thing over another. But the reality is, if it really boiled down to it, that the board felt that we need to be that involved in the situation, we could hold a meeting, and it would be an emergency meeting, and the second we get a quorum, the meeting's a go, and we vote on it.
Again, I'm confused. I thought the feedback to Mr. Pottinger a couple of minutes ago was, we empower you to make the decision based on the guidance that we're gonna put in place in the plan.
It was to a certain, that was the
Are we
guys, Mr.
shifting?
Pottinger, but there seems to be a lot of questions and a lot of people that seem to be, asking more management-based questions versus governance-based
Yeah, the
questions.
follow-up question was, well, what happens when it goes, if we shut down at 51, what happens if the following week it goes to 40? That was what led us to this current discussion. Do we then go green? And the discussion was then, well, how long do we wait? Do we turn to yellow? So that's how we got to this point. And my point to that was, we don't have to wait a month to get to that, or a marking period. We can hold a meeting to decide, okay, we just had 51 cases, we are going fully virtual. The next week, we are down to 40 cases. Do we go yellow then? And I think at that point, it's acceptable for us to say, okay, we hold a board meeting, advertise, hold the board meeting, and make that decision to do so. Because I guess what
my suggestion was, I thought all along we were looking at 2 weeks of data, right? I was
Yes.
looking at, that was the kind of the mandate to look at 2 weeks of data, right? So like, say we get 51, and say we go to 40. Okay, we're still in the yellow as far as I'm concerned, right? Say you get 51, and say you get 60 next week, red, hold a meeting.
I agree with you, Mr. Thompson.
I thought we were doing it.
I personally think that we stay the course for the quarter as hybrid. I like that idea. I think going down or going to more favorable, I would rather just, to go favorable, I'd rather just stay the course for this quarter, is my
So
recommendation.
even if our numbers are green worthy, we committed to be hybrid for the first marking,
Now the question,
unless we go red. which
Yes, and
at
so
that point,
yeah, that's what
Mr.
brought the
Biden
question
is
up then.
off.
So if we go red 2 weeks into this marking period, and then those numbers drop inside that marking period,
I say we gotta wait a month, Mike. I think we still gotta wait a month to go back from red to another.
Let me
back
try to
up.
summarize, sorry. Let me try to summarize where we are, okay? I think we're okay. I think I got it. Okay. So data metrics. Let's start there. 0 to 10, green. 11 to 50, yellow. 50 plus, red.
And this is based on Berks County data,
Based on
cases
Berks
per
data.
100,000.
Based on Berks data, yes. Cases per 100,000. We are in currently the yellow hybrid plan. If we go over the 50 mark, even if it's 51, based off of a 2-week data average, I pull the trigger and we go to red. Virtual immediately.
Right, without a board meeting. You
Without a
just
board
pull the trigger and do what you need to do.
That's what I'm hearing the board wants me to, so
Correct.
got it. So we go to red. We're gonna continue to monitor that data. We have monthly board meetings, so we meet regularly. That gives us the data points, whether that's a 2-week, maybe it ends up being a 3-week, but it gives we have a pretty short window of time. We can closely monitor that data, and then we can decide at the next board meeting, if data is looking favorable, we slide ourselves back into that hybrid plan. If we ever go into in the current yellow plan, or if we ever go into a green plan, and it's not needed to make these adjustments, we're gonna make educational commitments by a quarter.
Well, the only thing I would disagree is you mentioned if you go to red, right?
Yeah.
We're going to a more restrictive
Correct.
form of education, right? We
Yeah.
just said we would wait the quarter to go to less restrictive, right? So if you go from yellow to red, you're going more restrictive, right? So then we're basically saying, we're in this phase, we're on this phase, how I would look at it would be until the quarter is ended. And then they
I
can
like
see
that
from there.
idea. Yeah,
They can see from
that's what I think. Once we go to red, we can't go by 2 weeks or it's
No.
gotta be set either a month or a quarter. That we stay there until we're ready to go back to the next phase.
My only argument to that again is, say we have 40 over a 2-week period now, and it's completely fine. And then it spikes and it goes to 51 over a 2-week period. And then the next 2-week period, I come to the board and the board meeting say it's down to 40. At this point, if you go that direction, we're staying, even if it's 40 for the rest of that quarter, and it could be the first day of the quarter.
If that's the concern, then change 50 to a higher number.
That's what I agree. I mean,
Yeah, if you're worried about 50 versus 51,
we're so
then change
close.
it to something that we can live with. But I think the feedback is, we can't change it on a dime.
So 50, so the state says 100, so we can absolutely change that. The medical guidance that I continue to get is still stating at 50. I'm arguing the other point of the flexibility and the board's discussion of locking us into an educational pathway for a long period of time when data points can change. If we're using data points to make decisions, we shouldn't handicap ourselves, is what I guess I'm trying to say. We should have some of that flexibility, at least within the red and yellow phase, based off of where that data points are.
If we're gonna follow that more conservative, then we should follow our district. If we're gonna be based on the county, then we should follow what the guidelines are, or be closer there. I mean, we're almost there, we're about to go red, but, our county has no cases. But based on, our district, I'm sorry, but our county has the cases to almost push us into red. We're like 3 cases away, basically, whatever it is, for the county. But, I mean, and we're gonna be here in a few minutes, it feels like, in like 2 weeks, we're gonna be here wondering, are we going to red?
And when we go red, we're locked in.
And then we're locked in, so either, I think, my opinion would be to either raise it to 75 or 100, or go off of our district numbers. That's just how I feel.
Does anybody have any objection to raising that number?
No. I didn't. I think we go with the 50 that we voted on at the last meeting. I don't understand why we're raising numbers to, this is a pandemic, it's a virus. Yeah, not everybody's getting it. People on one side feel one way, people on the other side feel the other way. But in the long and the short of it, we're talking about kids' health. I mean, you're putting a number on children's health. So make that number as low as we can possibly make it. I mean, to me, if we got one case here, that's too many.
Now, I guess my earlier point to that is that we are not locked into those one meeting a month. So if we get to the point where we have gone red the second week of school, we do not necessarily have to commit to saying we are going to stay red that whole time if there is a dip. I mean, we're talking about a huge swing if we're saying we were at 51 and then 2 weeks later now we're down. I mean, that's, the trends don't point to do that as quickly as those numbers say. So, I mean, I would be in favor of letting that to Mr. Pottinger to say, okay, I've noticed the numbers have dipped for a 2-week period. Let's call a special board meeting and decide, do we go back to, yeah.
Or to that point, we could use the regular schedule meeting too, because we
Correct.
meet on a regular basis.
Depending
That's what I'm saying.
where it falls, I don't see any reason why we have to
Lock into a marking.
lock into the marking period. What my original point was, going back to the meeting on third, is I don't think that we should be switching every 2 weeks. So that's the moral of the story. I don't think that we have to, so you come back in week 1 and week 2, those numbers are elevated. You don't necessarily have to commit to staying red that entire marking period.
So I can live with that. If we go with Berks County data and we go restrictive like 50 as opposed to the up to 100 for districts much larger than us. So Berks County 50, if we go red, then you're saying empower Mr. Pottinger to pull us together. If all of a sudden the vaccine comes, whatever, if things look rosy, bring us together and we can make a decision on the spot, whether to go red and when to implement. I mean, whether to go green and when to implement, or yellow and when to implement. I can live with that.
Mr. Lever, to your point, I just wanted to clarify that this is not like making up numbers, this is state guidance. We have new guidance from the state saying up to 100, and these people that are involved in these discussions at a state level are medical professionals and people who are policymakers in public health. So it's not just like these numbers are being thrown out. These are people who, and again, granted, this is all new for everybody. That's the point here. No one's-
I agree with you. I'm just saying, we voted last month on a metric that we sat here and argued about for God knows how many hours. And now because these numbers don't seem favorable, we want to change the numbers.
We didn't have guidance there, and we had guidance from a local medical team, correct?
Okay.
Which Mr. Potter's proposing that we still follow. I'm just asking the question.
And Mr. Deaver, to the same point, the 50 number, I believe, is still something we should stick to. Mr. Sheets, I think you made that point earlier about being more conservative. It shows the importance of the safety aspect of it. My point, I think, what Mr. Likens is, I think we also need to be conscientious of the flexibility of the downside trend of data going the other direction, in a more positive way. And again, we make decisions in data then. And I think that's really critical that we do that. And I understand the quarter timeline makes sense to a lot of people because that's quarter. My fear is that it's kind of like the kindergarten conversation we had. A kindergarten parent could sign up in January and also before the day of school. Well, it could be the first of the quarter. I'm looking more long term, not like right now. It could be the first of the quarter, it could be the last day of the quarter. And so I'd rather look at the data on a regular basis and have those conversations at the board meeting and say, hey, here's where we are. I'm recommending that we go back to the yellow hybrid because we have now some consistent data that says we're well under the 50 for a consistent amount of time. Let's do that and not lock ourselves into a time period of a quarter. Even though that makes a lot of sense from the optics of it, it can be so fluctuating. And that's my concern. So I think, again, I agree 100% with the data. I just think we need to allow ourselves a little bit of flexibility of how we make those educational decisions of where we're operating. That's all.
The other thing I heard is regardless, other than red, we are not going to flip a switch in one day.
Correct.
So if we're going from red to yellow, it's not going to be, it's a Tuesday, Wednesday, you are now yellow. We are going to give a window for parents to accommodate that, unless it's rent.
Should I recap this again? Yes, please. Okay.
With the diagram.
Here's my diagram. All right. Our metrics, based off of the Berks County 100 per thousand, thank you, is 0 to 10, green, 11 to 50, yellow, 50 to 100, red. If we, right now we're operating in.
Just greater than 50. Just
Yes,
greater than
thank you,
50.
thank you. If we are operating hybrid now, if we go to 51, over that metric, once we hit that number, we go to red and pull that trigger immediately off that 2-week data. Just so the public knows and everyone knows, the data is released on a 2-week period on a Thursday, so we would have that information, and then the decision points on a Friday is when we would get that data to have a decision. So we make that decision, we go that direction, we're continually monitoring the data at the next board meeting, or if appropriate, we call a special meeting if the trend shows that we are getting positive, again, over a 2-week or plus more period of time, that shows that things are looking pretty good, and it would give us good justification to move back from a red to a yellow phase in the hybrid. Everyone comfortable with that? Just want to make sure we're all clear on, you know.
I don't like those, I mean, I'm fine, like I said, I'm fine if we go by the district, they're at 17. We're gonna be in the hybrid for a long time. It's not, but I still think that we're gonna be virtual in a few minutes, and that's just not giving our district a chance to get back to normal, to keep these kids' education at least somewhat normal, when we don't have the numbers that are showing. So that's just.
That is honestly the challenge. So our local community data is a lot different than what the county is. State is saying use the county.
The state's also saying to use 100 cases.
They are.
So, I mean, those are where those are my holdups.
All right, sorry.
So,
That's just the first one. I got one more for you.
all right,
So, last one, this is another conversation point for the board to consider. So,
are we going into a new topic discussion?
I was shifting to a topic discussion.
Okay, I have an issue to raise around that topic. So the communication plan to staff and to students and to families, should we get in our buildings COVID cases, what is our strategy? If there is a case, are we communicating to families, and which families or all families? If we get multiple cases in a building, are we communicating to which families or all families, and how soon? I think it's really important to know, for families who are sending their kids into our buildings, to know that they're going to receive really prompt, urgent info, should there be, my opinion is, a single case diagnosed, so that families can make educated and informed decisions about what's happening in the environment of our four walls that they're sending their child into.
So you talk about communication plan. I think you bring up three, in my mind, three different pieces. One is making sure we communicate now of what we're deciding tonight. It's a little bit different, so we need to make sure that gets re-communicated out to our families.
Sure.
I think we also need to make sure we communicate on an ongoing basis, as it's these, we have a conversation at the board meeting, like, hey, here's where we are, we're still continuing hybrid or whatever. So the ongoing communication. And then to your point, if there's a case. So I think we'll end up having two different communications go out. One is unique to the building, and then the other one is also letting the entire district know that there was. We would be transparent and make sure we do let all families know that there's a case. But I think that conversation probably looks even a little bit more different and refined at that building level. That be a case, so talk a little bit different on that information. The good news is that the Department of Health, HEMA, and PDE all joined together and joined forces to put together a Department of Health hotline for educators. And so that Department of Health hotline will allow us to be able to access Department of Health resources just for education. to be able to help with cases if this would come to fruition and help us with that plan of action. So that's really reassuring as an education leader right now.
So may I recap what I think I heard? So one is we have access to resources should we have a case.
Right.
Or a multiple cases, some kind of outbreak. So that's certainly good news. I'm not quite sure I'm clear yet in terms of if I'm a parent of a student, let's say I have an elementary student, and there's a positive diagnosis. How and when do I get informed, and at what level of detail?
So if there's a case, we would be letting all families know in the district, because I think it's very important to let everyone know, just because of busing, because of siblings, or whatever the case may be. And then the level of detail, we would be talking about what we'd be doing for cleaning remediation, what we'd be doing for ensuring the safety of the students that would be returning back to school. Again, I think that's where we rely on the health providers in that instance of helping us develop what the proper steps are.
Okay, so if I'm a parent of an elementary student and there's a high school COVID diagnosis, I'm gonna find out that the district has a positive case. Will I be told it's in the high school, not in my child's building?
Yes.
Or will I be left to guess?
Yeah, we'll state who's going to say.
Okay, all right. And if it's in the building where my kid goes, what else will I be told? Like, in terms of contact tracing and that kind of stuff? Like, how will I find out if my loved one shares a classroom space or shares a, something with the positive person?
So again, that's where we have to rely on the Department of Health.
Okay.
To be able to be our guide, to help us walk us through that process.
Okay, because, I can imagine our community members who are sending their loved ones will want to know, so that they can then affirmatively decide, do I want to continue to send my kid, or do I want to hold them back?
As much information as we can get to our families, of course, we want to be as transparent as possible. So as much information we can, that's why we're keeping assigned seats on the bus, assigned seats in the classroom, so we can help facilitate that conversation with the Department of Health. But we've got pretty clear guidance that when something happens, they're going to come in, kind of swoop in, and take control of the situation.
Okay. So we're not relying on the grapevine, we got a proactive communication. Great. Thank you.
Okay, last one, sorry. So several school districts, you may or may not have seen this, are having conversations about delaying the start of school. A lot are moving the start date from August 25th until August 31st. I'd like to discuss that with the board this evening and just see where the board is. There's absolutely two sides to this conversation. The first side is, if we decide to move school back 1 week, I think the first point of consideration to know for the board is that it will not impact the school calendar. So we can use something called Act 80 days, which we do not have to make up a school day if we use it as professional development, a school student day if we use it for professional development, but we still have to meet the number of instructional hours that are required for a school year. When we run the calculations, we can not have school those 4 days and still meet the instructional hours for the year. So we would not have to adjust the school calendar. That being said, if we do this and we move school off a week, I know it puts a fairly strong hardship on families. I'm very concerned about that. I'm very concerned about the pressure that puts on families. I get concerned about delaying it from the student aspect of it and not having students here with us when everyone's kind of anticipating and excited to come back on the 25th. There's absolutely some hardship for families and even perception concerns from my part, from the community if we do something like this. So those are my strong reservations and concerns. On the flip side, there are some issues that have started to develop as we get closer to the school year. We're ready for the school year, but the extra week would absolutely help from the planning aspect of it. So, for instance, personnel issues came in today, and so we have some last-minute hires that we're working through, 3 in particular, that we're trying to navigate around right now to have us ready for the start of the school year. again, we have contingency plans in place, but that extra week would help us solidify those personnel decisions, but we'll be able to start if needed. Supplies, we have all our PPE, we have masks, we have hand sanitizer, we have all those things, but there's some additional ancillary supplies that have not come in, such as stickers that would separate the 6 feet apart in the hallway. So it's not life type scenario things like masks, but there are a few supplies that are lingering that they're just held up in the supply chain because it's so hard to get stuff. But from a PPE standpoint, we're okay there. But again, that extra time buys us a little time to get some more of those things to come in. From the student perspective, we talked about this already, but just to kind of rehash, we received the student online surveys that came in last week. We had the student registration information for transportation. So our bus routing is being done at the end of last week and this week. Our reassigning schedules and class adjustments for number of online students that are now out of the class and readjusting schedules. That whole matrix is now being recalculated and pulled together. So that's there, and we're ready. Again, we're ready, but our administration could use a little bit of extra time to just refine that if necessary. Mr. Weaver, I know you had suggested that back in August 3rd. If it was August 3rd and we were having some of these pain points, I think it's a lot easier of a recommendation. I just worry tremendously from the parent side of it, of putting parents in a bad situation. But again, on the flip side of it, there's some strong consideration and reasons for doing it. So I bring that to the board this evening to see what your level of comfort is for either side of this, to say, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to push it off, or, what, from a family perspective, I value your input on representing the family and communities at this point to say, what, I agree with what you're saying in terms of it's going to be a hardship. Let's stick there. And I'd just like to reiterate to the point that either way we go, absolutely we can use more time. We can always use more time, but in this case, in particular, it'd be advantageous. On the flip side, we will be ready that first day of school. I will guarantee we will be ready that first day of school if that's the direction we go. So please know that it's not one of those situations where we're making a decision based off of, taking a gamble for it to be ready or not. But we'll make it work. So I open it up to the board for consideration.
One thought I had is, since Pennsylvania just came down with these guidelines today, we're a week out of school, would that extra week not allow us to have a stronger point of contact with families? Because I am sure this week there is going to be further guidelines, and even more so the following week there are going to be guidelines that could completely flip everything we've just discussed on its head. So I guess my point was that yes, I know the pieces of the puzzle missing here are things that are falling, but they're continuing to fall. So will that extra week, in my opinion, would give us extra touch points to our families and maybe more clarity to the things that we are missing or that the state is not currently prepared to share with us or know at this point.
I appreciate that. Honestly, that's been one of the most frustrating things. We kind of have a plan. As soon as we have a plan, something else changes in that road. And you can't imagine the amount of time that it takes on the back end to redevelop plans, or whether it's schedules or we're trashing everything. And the building administrators are here today, they tell you that we trash everything and start all over. And that has happened so many times this summer. And so I surely don't want our families to think that we weren't working all summer or we weren't prepared. It's just a matter of something happens and everything goes by the wayside and we have to pick up and start all over again. That's been absolutely one of the biggest challenges this summer for the team. Thank you, Ms. Wagner.
I'll say I stand by my decision back on August 3rd. Push it back a week. I would say we're prepared from what you're telling us. You're pretty prepared but not 100% ready, if that makes any sense, because of.
This is true.
Well, we're not. But from what he's telling us, that there's some issues that need to be corrected over the next week. Not to mention, I don't think the teachers have yet gone through the new computer system that we are implementing. So that all gotta be done in the next 4 days. So that would buy them extra time to go over all of this stuff that is gonna be implemented possibly the following week. And with the new data coming out about masks, I'm imagining Carolyn Honage's phone is gonna be ringing off the hook tomorrow. Because I think there's gonna be more kids going virtual tomorrow because of the mask implementation. So you're gonna need to give her more time. Like I said back on August 3rd, I think pushing it back a week I think it needs to be done.
Thank you for saying staff PD, because I actually had that on my list and plans for I forgot to mention it. We have PD for staff that starts tomorrow. So we'll be, as mentioned earlier, I'll be rolling out a lot of information to the staff tomorrow morning, but that goes all week. And then, of course, the students are anticipated to start Tuesday. And in normal circumstances, it works great. We have a PD, we get everyone back and welcome back, and it's great, and hugs and kisses everyone, and and we run back into this year. It kind of puts us a little bit of a jam in terms of the PD and then implementing on Tuesday, especially since we're doing a little bit different this year.
My only concern with doing this is the fact that these parents are putting so much trust into us, and I think now it's looking like they can't even decide when we want to start school. And I'm supposed to trust you with my kid's health, and you can't even start school on time. I think we have an amazing staff that's used to being accommodating and rolling with it, and teachers get new technology all the time, and we work through it. And would another week be nice? Yes, it would. But we also have these kids that have had calendars that they're marking down to the first day of school that are so excited to get into this building and see their friends again. And I just feel like one more week, what is one more week going to do? Look at this week. We've had so many different guidelines come out. That is going to be the nature of this game that we are playing with education right now. It is always going to be changing on a daily basis, and we're going to have to be ready for it. So I really don't see how 1 week is going to make that much of a difference. I think it's going to be detrimental to our reputation and being able to make decisions, because we can't even decide when to start school on time. So that's how I look at it, and I have a fear that many people in our community will also have that problem.
Could you clarify what is the issue with technology? So I understand we need more time perhaps for PDE and some supply chain issues. And then what's the other impact?
So a couple things. One is new curriculum resources. So those are all technology driven.
What does that mean? Can you just help me?
Yep.
New curriculum resources, software,
Software.
laptops, what are we talking?
Software
Okay.
resources. We also have some technology connected to how do we do doing the video sessions for our staff and training on how to do those video sessions so that they know when we do the live sessions in the afternoons through the hybrid plan, that they have tools to be able to do that. So that's built in there. And then there's also one of the massive ones that occurred this summer. By default, we had to do it, is a transition of our student information system. So we've all historically have used eSchool as our student information system, and we've transitioned that to PowerSchool because it was no longer supported. And that has not went as smoothly as what it could have. So that's kind of running up to the wire, but we're gonna have to go through that training with our staff with that new school system. It's not that different from what they're using now, but it is some differences in terms of the new interface that we'll be using for grading, attendance, those sort of things. And that's built into the PD plan this week.
And when was the training scheduled for? Like, has it had to be postponed?
It was not, no. but the transition from e-school to power school was intended to be done a lot earlier this summer, and it has not been going as smoothly as what we had anticipated. So we're getting there, and we're getting last minute things done right now through this week, but that has put some burden on us. And that's a hard one, because, I get it from a parent perspective, you're gonna look at, step back and look at it and say, you've had 3 months to figure that out, and that's not my problem now. I completely appreciate the perspective. It's just, anyone that knows working with software companies, sometimes you're at the mercy of tech support. Your hands are completely tied in terms of being able to do anything further in moving the product along, because you don't have the resources to be able to do it. So that's kind of our challenge right now with that aspect of from the technology.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Yeah, I mean, to me, if the students and faculty won't be safe because we don't have the right supplies or we don't have the right processes and procedures in place, then for me, it's a no-go. 1 week, if you need till after Labor Day, or until you can reassure us with strong confidence that you have everything that you think you may need, or everything that you've planned to expect, to me, it would be a hard no. The technology piece I'm struggling with, like, okay, how do you run a school if you can't do grades? Well, okay, you could go to paper grades for a week or two, but if you don't have software, and we're gonna be operating more than 50% of the time virtually, if you don't have, good internet connection, or, whatever, there's certain things that it's gonna fail. And, Mrs. Walliser, to your point, in terms of we're putting a product, or we're making a product available, it's one thing to say, come and get it. To me, it's better to delay the launch of the product to get it right than to launch and fall on your face. Particularly in this environment, when falling on our face might mean we're putting our kids and our faculty health at risk. Like, it's not just like, oh, the product launch isn't available.
I don't want to cause alarm here.
Yeah.
Let me reiterate.
He did say he would be ready to open if he needs to be.
Thank you.
It's
I'm
not
I don't want to
that.
cause panic at all.
luxury.
He would use the time, but
Our
what I
staff
heard you
can
say was
absolutely use the time,
you would be ready if.
but we
But I
would
guess-
be ready if necessary.
For me, if you're asking for an extra week because you feel you need an extra week, right? Like, you wouldn't be asking, if he was 100% looking today, if the team was 100% ready to say, we are 100% ready, then you wouldn't be asking for another week. So it's not a criticism, it's not a failure on anyone's part, like, ooh, sorry, you've been busy managing through a pandemic, so the software technology transition didn't go smoothly. Like, okay, your priorities were focused in the right place, okay? So no criticism about
Yeah,
that,
I
but
just
I don't
wanted to
think he
make
would
sure
be
that-
saying, I could use the extra week if you couldn't use the extra week.
I just wanted to make sure the way you were saying it was, you made it sound like we were going to be unsafe if we opened, and I just wanted to clarify that.
All right,
that
fair
it
enough.
was-
Yeah, fair
it-
enough.
He said it could be ready, it's not, I don't think he was thinking of jeopardizing our kids' safety,
Absolutely not.
because you said it like that, I just wanna make sure that.
Okay, so in terms of quality education, like you talked about, the kids need to be back in the classroom, totally get it. But if that experience is not on par, or if we're not ready to deliver a sort of a premium, a better than average experience.
I don't think that's the piece at all. I think it's more behind the scenes for the teachers. The kids will have no idea that this is a new curriculum and a new technology being rolled out. They'll have no idea. Is it gonna be a little bit more stressful for the teachers? Yes, it's new. Anytime something new curriculum comes out, it's more stressful for the teachers. But they will in no way show that to the students. I think they'll be 100% ready to go, or he wouldn't be giving it even as an option.
That's spot on.
I'll stand with whatever you choose to do.
Yes,
That's
I will
where I
stand.
feel.
I will
If you
stand.
need the week, you need the week. If you think you can do it and you don't need the week, I support you either way. But if you are bringing it to us for a reason, then
I just
I
feel
support
like
you,
a
so.
hard sell either way,
yeah.
I guess. And it's hard not being in your shoes and seeing what you do on a daily basis to come to this point, you know, so, I don't know.
And for me, in light of everything that's going on, I don't think there's any shame for asking for another week.
Right.
I mean, there's nothing that has gone since March the way anyone thought their life would go. So that extra week, is it going to be inconvenient? Possibly, but I'm going to argue the last 6 months have been fairly inconvenient for almost everyone. So I think there's no shame, and for me, I think adding touch points for parents with the student's assigned teacher through that week is going to be more beneficial for a successful transition into a hybrid model that no one in this district has experienced. Is going to be more beneficial than just saying, okay, let's jump right in both feet and hope for the best. That's my, not taking anything away from the planning that was done and the fantastic job that the administration was done. I'm just saying there's no shame in asking for another week in uncharted waters. That's my.
And that's honestly why I bring it to the board today. I tried to outline that in the beginning, sorry, Mr. Sheets. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I just want to make sure that we just come back around. So it's been almost 2 hours, and we haven't talked about sports. So I'm just figuring that can't have a board meeting without talking about sports. So something that we had discussed on the phone today, that we spoke about on the phone today, was there are certain sports that are going to kind of be really struggling to make it to their first game or their first match. If we delay a week, will those student athletes still be able to get in and do their stuff? Because from what I understand, and I wish Mr. Geist was here because he would be able to answer this question for us, probably pretty quickly. There needs to be a certain number of practices before you're able to participate in a sporting event by PIAA or BCIA rules. If the kids lose that first week of school, they're actually not going to be able to. They might not be able to make that number. So how is that going to affect our field hockey or soccer or volleyball kids?
So I apologize, I don't have all that information right here. It'd be great if Mr. Rice here. But my thought is, in a normal school year, we all love that one.
Yeah.
In a normal school year, practices are permitted the week before school, typically the week before school starts. And so kids can come in, they do their practices, even though we don't have school in session yet, and those are all permitted by BCIA or PIAA, whatever you look at it. And so I would like it to be a similar thing.
Not that that's a deal breaker. I mean, if we need an extra week, well, the sports kids are going to have to deal with it. But just so that we're making sure that we're covering all of our bases, because the last thing we want is the sports parents showing up in a month.
Well, the reason I bring it to the board, like I said, if I can just pull this conversation back together, is I said earlier that we will be ready by Tuesday for our students coming to 25th. It is in our PTUs a luxury, and maybe a little bit more luxury, but it's one of those things where we can have the time will absolutely be used well. I think Mr. White makes a good point about touch points with families. We can ease that transition in a little bit smoother than Tuesday everyone comes in and kind of is like, okay, we're ready to go. We can make that touch point process a little bit easier with our staff connecting with kids in that process. So, I needed to hear from the board what your thoughts were on this is a hard no, or this is something we are open to. Because if it's something we're open to, I would say let's take advantage of it. It will absolutely help our staff. If it's something that the board is not open to, for all the other reasons we talked about tonight, then I completely understand that. And again, we'll be ready and have a safe operation for the start of school. But it sounds like most people are open to that concept.
You want a straw poll?
Well, you said, you're getting a mixed message here, in my opinion, from what I'm hearing, like you said you were kind of 60, did you mention that? You were kind of, you have a feeling, I guess we're saying, we're relying on you as an administrator, as a superintendent, based on what we're telling you, kind of make you feel where you want to go. So you know better, you know the whole lay of the land better than we do. We're just coming into this hearing, certain aspects of what you're telling us, and, but we're not seeing everything, and it would be beneficial maybe to allow you to make that the best decision.
Yeah, but hearing where the board sits now, I would say let's make the recommendation and add that as a decision point tonight to move us from August 25th to the 31st. and buy that extra time to support our staff getting prepared and our students all the way. That's where, you know, I'm assuming kind of from the collective that most people are okay with that concept. And, you know, I still have concerns or reservations, I'm sure just as everyone else sitting at this table does tonight, of saying, yeah, what's the impact going to be to family and the perception? Like, yeah, absolutely, those things weigh heavily on me, absolutely. But if we can be comfortable with that, and Mr. Wagner, I think you made some key points there. If we can be comfortable with that, and we can use the time wisely to make a nice transition for our students, I think that makes a lot of sense. We will have F, and change the starting school day from starting school year from August 25th to the 31st.
We're going from a Tuesday to a Monday now. We will go on that Monday.
Correct, yeah, and Mr. Pratt, I think we probably should add in, use the 25, 26, 27, 28 of that 80 days.
And we're still, sorry, like, just, we're off that Friday,
That's correct.
and that doesn't,
That
that's
will,
not.
there will be no other calendar changes.
Yeah, but just with starting the kids getting 2 days versus 1 day for instruction with those splits.
Correct. The one group will have only 1 day that week, compared to, in the current model, it would be 1 and 2,
Well, no,
and
but
2.
how do things like that happen when we have Fridays off, right?
Next week with Monday.
Yeah, but that's not always like that. It's more just a.
This is a whole nother story, but
I know,
you
it's
know,
a
when we get
whole
into
nother-
snow days, and we're still hybrid snow
Disregard
days,
that I even
we actually don't even have to worry about snow days this year, because we continue the operations in a virtual world this year,
all that.
which is nice. So there you go, that's really, we get all spring break this year.
It's a win-win. It
It's
really
a
is.
win-win.
Everything's working out.
So
Really.
just to be clear, by going to the 31st, correct, we are still seeing that by guidelines, we're getting the 990 hours of instruction in for our students.
We will
Still,
not make any calendar adjustments to add days of day.
okay.
Yes. At this time.
May I ask a real quick question, countywide data? So, is there any Berks County school right now that's going full-time like green?
Yes,
There is,
yes,
okay. And then there's a batch like us that are going yellow.
correct.
And then there's also a batch that are in red remote for at least the first half of the year.
That's right.
Okay.
And there's some that are going half and half, like Wilson, they're sending like their elementary back, but middle school through high school are completely virtual to start.
Right.
So, Liz, to answer your question, from my understanding, Conrad Weiser, Daniel Boone, Governor Mifflin, Hamburg are all full 5-day instruction. And
So
then
5 out of the 18.
Muhlenberg was, and then they changed. They're now went from 5
They're full virtual.
to full virtual. They did
Wow.
180.
Exeter's full virtual, Old Lake's full virtual, Schuylkill Valley.
And so you have Exeter, Olean, Reading, Schuylkill Valley. And then hybrid is Boyertown, in some format, hybrid, I say that loosely. Some format, Boyertown, Brandywine Heights, Clevewood, Kutztown, virtual,
Yes.
correct? Or I mean,
No,
hybrid. And Wilson is, Wilson and Wyomissing are hybrid in some format.
And Freedom's completely virtual
They're
also.
virtual, that's correct.
So it's pretty even split if you look at the numbers.
Thank you.
Mr. Sheets, just to answer your sports question earlier, Mr. Geis sent me a message, he said, contact sports are moved back to 9/4, so students would be back in school by that point. But we have always held practice before the official start time, so like tennis and golf, they start 9/4, so it would give us the latitude to be able to make those changes. Okay. Cool.
So
So we vote on this, or straw poll them, or what are we doing, or we just?
The motion right now is that you have A through D to vote on, E separate, and and then F now separate as well too.
Okay.
So, and we have to go to public comment as well.
So we have committee reports to get through. Got it.
Well, and there's one other part of the plan, we talked about temperature checks. Has that been aired out in this form as an addition to the health and safety plan?
I had it included as the health and safety plan. Do you want to make adjustments to what I had proposed?
Well, I think that was discussed in an exec session that wasn't presented in public.
Oh, first one, public,
Oh, it
let's do the
was.
public, yeah.
Okay, okay.
It's just a couple of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So long. Yes, I missed my birthday. Huh? December 14th.
All right. All right, let's move on to the start with BCIU. Mrs. Hughes, are you prepared to speak?
Yeah, there's nothing, material to report, beyond what's already documented in, the electronic document. The next meeting of the BCIU board is this coming Thursday night, and that board will, be, being asked to support the health and safety plan that the BCIU has put together. And it just, that organization continues to help all 18 districts navigate through this, these challenging times.
Thank you. Mr. Wagner, anything to report from BCTC?
I'm going to turn my time over to Mr. Pottinger to give you the rundown of
just
the nuts and bolts of what they've decided.
I touched upon BCTC in the transportation, but where BCTC is right now is they are planning to come back for virtual, or full in person. And so that is the plan for all our BCTC students, 10th, 11th, 12th graders. So again, to accommodate that for our students, we will be sure to have transportation for those students that will be in a virtual world on the off days, that we can pick them up and get them to BCTC to transport them so they don't miss any of their educational experiences.
All right. Mr. Nyman, anything with FERC's earned income tax?
No report.
Mrs. Walliser, anything with COLA?
I know the Senate and the House Education Committee meets on Wednesday, so it would be very exciting to see what could be coming out from them because it is a hot topic of COVID. To be continued.
So I've been into the policy. Mrs. Eisenhardt, strategic planning and goals.
Yeah, Mr. Potter is also going to take this one over.
All right, I'll move on until these,
Oh, good. So we have our new 2020 goals this year. So usually this is something we celebrate, and it's the direction for the school district. Just as a point of reference, how we get to our goals, we have a strategic plan process, a 5-year strategic plan process. We boiled that down and created a Gantt chart of how we were going to attack our goals from that strategic plan over the 5 years, the next 5 years. So that's what drives our goals. We broke our goals up into 4 categories. We have a goal for enhancing communication. We have a goal for high quality instruction. We have another goal for safe learning environments. And then we have a 4th goal for organizational efficiencies. And so within those, we have some additional objectives that we've outlined to focus on. The board has this document in front of you. A lot of the major things this year are very contingent upon where we are in the current COVID crisis. And so much of our energies have been put there. But to give a lot of credit to our staff, our administration, and our teachers who are still adjusting and still working on other key initiatives to help us move forward as a district. And obviously, we constantly are working to improve ourselves on the educational side, on the student side, on that kind of product side of education. So we have items in here. I think for the sake of time, I'll kind of leave it at that high level overview unless you would like to go into specifics. You okay with this as well?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Mrs. Hughes, negotiation compensation.
Nothing to report.
I'll do the building construction committee. We did not have a meeting, but I just wanted to give everyone an overview of where we stand right now. There's a summary there of how the elementary school addition project is going. I just want to overview that, in theory, the ECI is a general contractor and doing a very nice job with oversight and quality. To date, they've demolished and have completed a hallway connection to the old gym, a new hallway to connect the lobby to the gym area, the foundations for the gym, 2 classrooms, 2 small group rooms, and a storage area. The first great wing have been constructed. Storage and electrical spaces across the hall from the office have been built and are beginning to be occupied. A new bathroom system is in the hallway, in the new hallway has been built. Plumbing run and painted. The floor and fixtures are being installed. The timeline is about a week behind schedule, but not in a bad way. The next phase will be to continue the construction of the walls of the spaces in the first grade wing and new gymnasium. That's all I have to report. Okay, we're going to ask for any public comment before we make any roll call votes. There are 2, your left, our right is a microphone. If you please would step up. When you do step up, please let us know your name and your address. And also, please understand per board policy, we're asking that each comment lasts no more than 5 minutes. I will, if need be, extend some time to you if you feel like you have a good point to make, but please try to stick with the 5-minute time frame for board policy. So also please give yourself space. So if there's somebody up, just get in line with maybe equal 6+ thing. Try to impose yourself. Anybody want to comment? Yes. Hello.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Eric. I am a social studies teacher at the high school. Good evening, Mr. Kaiser. I am here on behalf of not only myself, but of the faculty, a majority of faculty who feel unheard and feel as if our concerns have not been addressed. And prior to this meeting, I forwarded all of you an email that identified specific concerns. Hopefully everybody did receive that. I emailed it right at 5:30. I wanted to share that with you because there isn't enough time this evening to share all of our concerns. I would like to thank Mr. Weaver for reminding us that we are dealing with a virus, whether we have an opinion about it or not. We feel rushed. We feel not asked what our thoughts are. We have not been included in a conversation. We have been provided information, but have not been asked how we thought about it or felt about it. The process to open schools has not provided us with much time. For example, this Saturday morning, I was sent an email from Catherine Site letting me know that there are no virtual teaching positions available at the high school or the middle school level. We were floated a possibility of this as an opportunity for faculty who are fearful for our lives, for the lives and health of our loved ones. For example, our caregivers who are our parents, who take care of our children, who have cancer, who are going to be sitting with our kids while we come to work and possibly bring that virus back home and kill them. We have not been given a chance to thoroughly process the fact that there are no virtual teaching positions, even though, as Ms. Kuhn asked, there are 87 kids as of right now who are to have been proven to be successful in the spring when we quickly adapted to virtual teaching. And we're flexible and we're gracious with our students who we care about. Those of you who know me, Mr. Sheets, Mrs. Young, who have had your children, we love our students. We bend over backwards for those children. I have had weekend review sessions at Kutztown University for my AP US history students. We have fed those children breakfast. We provide them with lunch money. I have called those students who were not doing their work all spring at home to ask them if they're well. I was texting students who did nothing, fearful for their mental health. You need to understand that we are dedicated to your children because we care about them and their education. We do many things in the spirit of education for them. What you are asking us to do is to put our lives and our health on the line. For what? 20 minutes a day to teach what? Do you know what they're going to come to us with? They're going to come to us with the needs for socialization. They're going to come to us out of fearful for what is happening. How much of an educational experience that is meaningful are we going to be able to provide to them? When we could be live, synchronously teaching in a virtual platform, which we are capable of doing, we have proved that in the safety of a place where we don't have to worry about, my God, these kids are going to have to wear masks all the time. In a place where we can feel like we are going to not let those kids fall behind academically because we decided to give them 20 minutes here and 20 minutes there of what? I don't know how many of you have ever come into our classrooms and see what we do and the nature of our discourse. It would be a more meaningful experience for them to give them a safe environment where they will feel that they don't have to worry about catching a virus that might kill their parents or their grandparents, or God forbid, any one of them. Our lives and our health are hanging in the balance here. You are not making an educational decision. You are making a health decision. You are standing in a field right now and making a health care decision for us that many of us are fearful for our lives. We're not upset out of laziness or frivolousness. We have genuine, real fear. Most of us haven't gone anywhere but a grocery store, if that. We're going to be thrown back into a building where kids are super spreaders. I will not pretend that you don't know the data. I know that if you're on a school board, I know that you are people that care. I know that you are people that care about children and education and the health and well-being of those kids. I know you have read what is going on in Georgia, Nebraska, all over the South where they are opening. I am watching even adults in this room wearing masks, and you are asking us to manage the kids wearing masks in our classroom. I've been watching adults take masks off, pull them down, and we're going to be in a classroom where we're going to expect kids to follow those rules. What other adult is going to help me manage a classroom of 11th graders if a student doesn't know how to wear a mask properly? We are being asked to do so much. We have done so much. We do so much for those kids out of love and care. We are being asked to clean our classroom as if we are hospital staff. But we are not being given the N95 mask to be hospital staff. We are not being given any information about treat them with validity. Many of us cannot afford to take a sabbatical or to apply for the FFCRA Act provision. We can't. You're asking us to choose between our financial stability and our health. And that is not fair to ask. We've been told many times that we are part of this community, that we are family. I would not ask my family to lay their health on the line for me. And I know that none of you would want that asked of you either. And so all I am asking is if you please listen to our concerns and hear us, because we would like to propose that you do the right, safe thing, which is to provide us with a safe learning experience that is meaningful as well. That when I meet with my AP US History students, I am able to have a great conversation with them that is enlightening. And I'm not standing in front of them fearful every moment of being near them or getting close to them or asking them if they need help. That is not a learning environment conducive to learning. And if any of you come into our rooms, if you have before, you know that sometimes even on the best days, and it's sunny outside, and it's spring, and the hormones are out, it is hard to educate children. And now you're asking us to do this during a global pandemic, an unprecedented moment in our recent history, when we have the full capability to teach virtually. And we have proven to you that we can do it. We are asking that that praise not be in vain, and that you treat us with dignity, and that you validate our concerns by listening and making choices that are best for all of us. Thank you.
So, before we move on, Ms. Zareks, thank you very much for your comments. I do appreciate them. I may not agree with them completely, but I do want to thank you for taking the time to come in. Understandably, your fear is very real. And I know it had to be hard for you to stand up there and have that conversation with us. With that being said, Mr. Potter, is there a way we can address some of the concerns? One of the situations it sounds like that is a point of contention with some of our staff is, the cleaning or not having access to cleaning supplies. Is that a valid concern?
So to answer that, we have put cleaning supplies in all the classrooms. We have purchased additional cleaning materials for our custodians to clean during the day as well as after hours, special disinfectant spray to help sanitize the facilities. And then we're also working to have additional custodial staff to come in and do support with the cleaning processes for our buildings on a daily basis.
How about N95 masks for our staff?
Those are extremely difficult to get. We do have masks such as these that we will be distributing to staff. And we also have surgical masks such as what you're wearing. They're available to staff members.
So with the N95 masks, maybe we can leverage our relationship with St. Luke's Bethlehem, St. Luke's Health Network. I was thinking of the facility that I go to. St. Luke's Health Network, and see if we could perhaps procure some of those masks, because I know that a lot of the healthcare facilities actually have a cleaning process for the N95 masks. So it's one of those things where our employees could wear them, keep them at school, and then kind of maybe on our Wednesday day or Friday or whatever, we could then coordinate to have those taken, cleaned, returned back to the building on Monday. That way our staff has access to a higher level of protection of masks.
Not opposed, we can look into. I think the supply and demand is the major issue right now. A lot of those are going directly to the healthcare providers and hospitals, and it's been limiting to try to get that supply within 95 days.
To be honest, it never hurts to ask.
We can ask, absolutely.
Yeah.
But that's why we want to make sure we got masks such as these, the surgeon mask and other safety precautions for our staff. And we also purchased a face shield for each staff member as well.
And I can speak to N95 use even with COVID patients that I've seen, because I'm a healthcare provider. In my hospital, I can go into a room, I can interview that patient, even if they're COVID positive, as long as there's no aerosolized treatment going on in that room, and I'm 6 feet away with a phase 3 mask, which is not a PPE, or not an N95, similar to what you're wearing. They're telling me that I'm safe. I've been doing that for 5 months now, and I'm not COVID positive. So just to be fair, to understand that in a healthcare environment, yes, if you're in a COVID positive room with a patient within 6 feet of them, with an aerosolized treatment is being under, in that environment, then yes, you are wearing an N95.
And as a frontline, EMS worker, I pretty much, there are situations where you do have to wear N95s. We do have access to N95s because of that reason, but for the most part, the vast majority of my calls for the last 3 months, I've been wearing a mask similar to this, or a cloth face mask with also no COVID, no COVID positivity. I do, like I said, I do understand, and unfortunately Miss Eric's left, but I do understand the fear that they're coming from. But the other side of the coin, though, also is, I'm not sure about everybody else at this table, but Mr. Tomasi and myself have been working through this entire situation, and it is a bit scary. But I think that there comes a certain time where you've signed up for a job. This is now part of the job. Whether you're an 18-year-old kid working at a grocery store or you're a 45-year-old man working on an ambulance. The teachers, I think we need to do our best to make sure that the teachers feel comfortable and they feel safe. But we also need to continue moving forward with this plan. Thank you for entertaining me.
Mr. Herman, the people at home weren't able to hear your response on the cleaning supplies. Would you be able to say that again so they can hear it?
Sure. Yeah, I'm sorry. So the cleaning supply aspect of it, we have cleaning supplies in the classroom plates for the staff to use if they so wish to lay down the desk in between class changes. But we have those in all the rooms. We also have cleaning. We have a special disinfectant that we're going to be using that will be done in all the classrooms, all the spaces after school. That will happen. And then we also have the regular cleaning process that's going to happen that we would be normally doing. Knowing that there's a lot of burden put on our custodians right now, and I'm meeting with all our custodial staff and letting them know that they are the backbone of this plan. Cleanliness is key. We also are shifting staff to have additional support for those staff members and have additional staff members to help them with the cleaning process. So that way we can ensure that the most effective cleaning process is done. So between additional staff, between supplies in the classroom for our teachers, and disinfectants being sprayed by our custodial staff as well as the regular cleaning process, I feel very confident in the plan of ensuring that we have a clean facility. And then one last point of consideration as I speak is during the day, we also have our daytime custodians wiping down all those common touch points that would be frequently used. Handrails, door handles, that sort of thing. So our daytime custodians are going to be doing that throughout the day to help ensure that those common touch points are disinfected as well. Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Just a little clarification on the N95s. First of all, they are very difficult to clean. You're talking about $7 to $10 per mask. They can't be worn 2 days in a row. They need to be isolated for at least 72 hours. And like a brown paper bag is fine. And also, if you're using N95s, they are classified as a respirator. You need a fit test for every person wearing one. And it's only specific for that brand and mask. So you need somebody to come in that's registered to certify those fit tests. Which I'm sure the hospital has their own people that do it.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. phenomenal information. I appreciate that.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're thinking N95s, you're gonna be spending a lot on them.
Thank you for that. You know, again, all the information we're seeing is that cloth masks, surgical masks are.
Yeah, you should also have other PPE, available for, the teachers, if they want gowns, definitely gloves.
Yep, and we have.
If they're gonna be working on it, you need gloves.
We did purchase a large supply of gloves as well that are available. Yeah. Thank you. Good point. I didn't realize that there's the 2-day wear and the fit test, so thank you.
Yeah, I mean, technically, it should be, it's supposed to cover every time, but because of the shortage, there's some allowances now, you can wear. And the ideal way is to wear it and you wear a second mask over top, so you keep it from being soiled, because then once it's soiled, it's done, or wet, it's done.
So, just 2 quick follow-up questions. I'm pleased to hear that there is additional custodial staff. I believe on August 3rd, I asked that specific question. And I think at least at that time, the answer was same staffing model or same staffing volume, but reconfiguring shifts to ensure better coverage. Just to clarify, are you now saying, Mr. Potiker, we are adding to custodial staff?
So what we've done is, when we first came to this meeting in August, we talked about the green. Now that we have moved to a hybrid, we've been able to reallocate some of our staff members and help and have those staff members help us with the cleaning process. So yes, we will have additional hands-on for cleaning.
Okay, that's reassuring to me. And then just, maybe it was just a casual remark, but a minute ago you said, well, we'll have cleaning supplies available if the staff so wishes to use it. It seems to me that there should be absolutely clear protocols and expectations for cleaning desks, whether students clean their own desk before they sit their stuff down on it, and when they leave, or whether teachers or whoever is like it shouldn't be a if they so wish. That phrase made me go like, wait a minute, that's way too not clear in terms of expectations.
So we are developing protocols to make sure that everyone has common guidelines on how to address those things.
Okay, yeah, all right, good.
So go ahead.
Hi, I'm Craig Rocco. I live on 18th Steve Lane in Fleetwood. First and foremost, I'd like to say thank you because honestly, I don't think this board gets enough credit for the amount of time and work that they put in and everything that they do. And I know this is an extremely difficult challenge because you're being asked as non-healthcare professionals to make decisions about healthcare, which is really, really difficult. So thank you for all of that. And with that being said, I think a lot of the times this data that we get is lost in perspective because, different people throughout the whole conversation made many valid points. Mr. Sheets, I believe, like he said, one outbreak will push us over 50. And then another comment by, said that, why were we so quick to shut things down in March that we are now? Well, where we were in March and April are night and day, and where we are now in our knowledge base regarding COVID and how we handle it, how we manage it. So it's a huge, huge difference compared to where we are now. For point of perspective, I am in the healthcare field, and I was at the epicenter of Berks, in Berks County with their first outbreak, dealing with one of the largest casualty rates in nursing homes in all of Pennsylvania. So I lived through it for over a month and a half, 2 months, wearing full PPE night and day, the moment I walked in, the moment I walked out. So I'm very coming from a point of, I know the severity of the disease and what it can do. However, at the same time, I'm standing here as a parent, someone who knows the healthcare system and is strongly encouraging you to actually do the opposite of what everyone is saying and send people back to school. Because I feel, looking at all the data that I've reviewed and months of research and study on the topic, is that we can safely do this in our community. It's not a large community, we're very spread out. If you look at Berks County as a whole, they're very different than our regional data, which was pointed out very eloquently here. And I think if we use 50 as a benchmark with a strong cutoff to red, that sets us ultimately up for failure. Because I guarantee once you start regardless of what happens in your safety measures, once you start to introduce a populace back into an area which they weren't before, AKA kids going back to school, we will have increase in rates. We will. We will. It doesn't matter if they're asymptomatic, it doesn't matter if they're in the hospital, it doesn't matter the severity of the disease, we 100% will. Because what are you gonna do with those kids that have a fever? The first kid that comes with a fever, that they're gonna get tested, whether or not that this, that, and then their brother and their uncle and everyone and all the trees contacting. And the people that are in healthcare know how this works. Like, we will be over 50 in a heartbeat, even if it was the flu, and we did this, just by basic epidemiology. And if you look at the science and not take out the emotional, political component of this, I think it's very safe to do, and we can do it. And we're also looking at, I feel, my own personal opinion is from a bias and a poor risk management standpoint. Let's say, for example, say we have 140 seniors in a class that can drive. Statistically speaking, through the National Council of Safety, one of those 440 seniors are going to die in a car accident. However, only 8 in 100,000 cases of COVID in children result in hospitalization. Just a hospitalization. Less than 1 in 100,000 across the nation have passed away. Now, I'm not trying to prove the statistics wrong and put our kids in danger. However, I'm asking us as a board and as a community to look at the science behind it. And then also, if we're going to sit here and talk about a community, we all know that a large portion of our community sits below the poverty line. And now we're asking parents to virtually teach our kids and make a decision to go into school, to go into work and put food on the table, to staying home and virtually teaching their kids. Or they're making a choice to leave their 10-year-old at home while they go to school. And as dramatic as this sounds, we're okay if that 10-year-old has an accident in their home, say eating a snack that he normally does, and something terrible happens to him, but we're not okay if it happens in our school. Why are we okay if it happens in our community based on what happens on the school, based on the decision we have to make? So, I think these are all really, and I don't sit on the right side, and I don't sit on the left side of the extremes. I just try as a healthcare professional, as a father, to look at the science and what I feel safe. I have 3 kids in this school district with 1 on the way, and I feel very confident in our staff and in our school board that we can do this, and we can safely send our kids back to school. And I really love the hybrid, because I think it gives us a stepping stone. It allows people who can safely do it. And it's not just a blanket, it's not just a red light, green light. And if we keep it at that 50, and we hit 51 and shut it down, we will be virtual in 2 weeks. I think we really need to understand what that means and really take, and another point that was brought up, that the numbers change all the time because it's a fluid process. We didn't know about the 100 last week because it changed. And it's going to change continuously. So if we narrow the window, we're never going to be we're never going to be able to adapt from a scientific standpoint on the safety of how we measure things. So I think these are all really, really, really important things to consider from all angles: health, school, education, socioeconomic, the well-being of our kids at home when parents aren't there. It's not cut and dry, and I don't envy the position that you're sitting in. But I guess my plug and my feeling would be to let's try it, let's give it a whirl, and let's make sure we do it safely. And I 100% agree with the people that said if we get 2 or 3 cases in our schools, literally in our schools, that's a completely different story. But, Reading Hospital has a spike in cases, and we shut down, even though we're 30, 40 minutes away, and no one works for Reading Hospital. And then, regionally, if you look at, I know I'm close on time, if you look at regional data of our 2 largest hospital systems that we sandwich in here, Lehigh Valley sends out, Mr. Chauncey, you know this, Lehigh Valley sends out reports all the time, and since April and May, their numbers have steadily drawn out and flattened. And the same thing with Reading Hospital. I don't have their numbers, but I work out in Reading, and I speak to ER docs and their internal medicine doctors, and they are seeing less and less cases of severity. Like, that's where you have to understand some epidemiology. With all this screening, we are going to have higher cases, higher incidents, higher prevalence. But if you look at the mortality rate in Berks County, not the United States, it's plateaued. Which makes sense. Because you're finding more and more people with the disease, but less, like the same amount of people are dying. So that's plateauing, but our incident rate is climbing. So I mean, if you look at the numbers and you look at it from that standpoint, it's something really, really strong to consider, to not have a strong cut and look at our regional, and I know we don't live in a bubble, and I know we travel, and I know we can bring it in and we can bring it out, but I mean, that's everywhere. So just, thank you for listening, thank you for taking the time, and again, I much respect, so, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rocco.
Well, I didn't expect to be here tonight. My name is Elisa Hammond. I was listening while I was working at home, and I managed to just hear Mrs. Eric speak. And she had a really good point. I'm just thinking, if the school is here to educate, that's your goal. I'm struggling to understand what the point is of sending the kids to school for literally 20 minutes of class. I teach at the literacy council. I have 2.5 hour classes, and it's gone, bam, like that. 20 minutes, I'm trying to think. You're gonna go through all of these protocols. And what will the students learn? I think at minimum, you would have divided classes so that they have a good solid hour and a half. Maybe do half their core classes on the one day, and then the other half on the other day, if you're gonna put the teachers in that kind of position. But to have them go through all of those procedures for 25 minutes max, I just don't understand it. That's all I have to say.
So if I can just clarify, Ms. Davis, thank you for bringing the point up. The minutes are between 28 and 30 minutes per period. Our normal period is 42 to 43, so you're shaving off about 10 minutes per period. So the high school is 28 minutes per period, just to make sure we're all on the same.
I think they're getting the 20 minutes from the mode schedule in the afternoon, is that correct?
That could be,
I think that's-
15 minutes in the afternoon.
Yeah, I think that's what that's.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question as it relates to the high school in particular? And I was intrigued when I asked the question about what are the schools in the county doing and where did everybody land? It's almost like a third, or close to it. But one of our peers, I guess, in the county, or at least one, at the high school level, I guess it's all virtual, versus at the elementary level, it seems to be an easier path to understand, particularly, based on Laura and Alexis's feedback, with younger kids, there's like this dying urge on the calendar to get back to school, to see their teacher and to see their friends. Where at the high school level, my guess is many of those high schoolers have been socializing anyway, because they have the ability to get themselves around town a little bit better. Was there thought put into, was that ever an option that you guys considered in your planning to say high school virtual, younger grades in class more?
It wasn't a consideration, we evaluated that, but for me, I felt it was important that we had the same experience for our high school students as we did for the elementary students. From an academic standpoint, I think it's important that we get our students into school. And again, when we first were looking at this, it was green, and now we kind of adjusted to yellow. So now that we're here, I think it's really important that we have that same opportunity to be in contact with their teachers, have that face-to-face interaction. I believe there is inherent value in having that versus doing it over a computer screen. And so we did look at it, but when we came to it, we decided that it would be better to have a K-12 district-wide plan for how we're going to approach the yellow phase.
Thank you.
Any more comments? Everybody certain? Any more comments? Okay. So since we have already had a motion, we're going to separate these out. We're going to do A through D, E, and then we have an F, which is going to be, we're going to say that a bit here, what that is. So we already have a motion to go on with A through D. So I'm going to go ahead and do a roll call through letters A through D.
Mr. Hubert,
Yes.
Dr. Carter,
Yes.
Mrs. Eisenhardt? Yes. Mrs. Henry?
Yes.
Mrs. Hume?
Yes?
Mr. Sheets?
Yes.
Mr. Wagman?
Yes.
Mrs. Walter?
Yes.
Mr. Twasi?
Yes.
9 yeas, motion passes.
Okay. I need a motion to approve letter E. Do you guys like me to read that out, or is everybody
It's as written.
as written? Okay. To approve letter E under the board of directors report. I need a first,
So
second,
yeah. Second.
so she's,
Sorry, I was reading.
Unless you want one
second. Unless he's up with that too.
Dr. Carter?
No.
Mrs. Eisenhardt? No. Mrs. Henry?
Yes.
Mrs. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Sheets?
Yes.
Mr. Wagman?
Yes.
Mrs. Walter?
Yes.
Mr. Beam?
No.
Mr. Twasi?
yes.
6 yeas, 3 nays, motion passes.
Okay, I need a motion to approve letter F, which I'm gonna read to you now. Letter F states, to approve the change of the 2020-2021 pupil instructional school year from Tuesday, August 25th to Monday, August 31st. The time previously scheduled from August 25th to August 28th will be utilized as at 80 days.
So moved.
Second. Was that back to 80?
Yes.
Okay.
At 80 days. So Sheets, Beaver first, Beaver and Sheets. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Eisenman? Yes. Mrs. Henry? Yes. Mrs. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Sheets?
Yes.
Mr. Wageman?
Yes.
Mrs. Walter? Yes. Mr. Bieber?
Yes.
Dr. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. Tomasky?
Yes.
9 yeas, motion passes.
Okay, moving on to Roman number 2, business and operations report, and a motion to approve the item under business operations.
So moved. Second.
Sheets, Beaver.
Finally made it out of that first section. That was only like 3.5, 4 days.
Hopefully we can get to this section a little faster.
Don't jinx us.
Okay,
Stop it.
I think, pretty much standard information, here. I guess maybe the one item I highlight, and if there's any others, I'll ask if you have any questions, but just under facilities and maintenance, item G1, there's a change order there, related to the elementary school renovation at a cost of, $7,698. So I just wanted to highlight that. And I did add item O based on our conversation earlier. I've included it in the Google agenda. I'll read it here for item O. To approve the administration to enter into a new money scenario of $5 million and a refund of the district remaining 2014 notes as per the presentation on August 17, 2020 by Mr. Scott Kramer from RBC Capital Markets.
Just one slight input, Mr. Pratt, maybe it's perfect the way it's written, but should we add not more than into that 5 million?
Motion, yeah. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, for the O item, because they.
I don't have.
Oh, I'm sorry. So,
If that's
to
what
approve the
you're-
administration, so right now, we've to approve the administration to enter in a new money scenario of 5 million. The conversation with RBC was if it has to be lower, it's fine to be lower. So should we be adding in language in there, not, up to $5 million? So we change it from into a new money scenario of 5 million to into a new money scenario of up to 5 million.
That's the motion, how you'd like it to read, then.
I'm just saying, does that
That's what you think that's what we talked about.
sound good to everyone? If we make that, yeah. Okay, cool, do it, please. Do it now.
Item on separate, yes.
And I guess I'll mention something else while we're talking, and I hesitate, because Mr. Potter and I haven't had a chance to fully, flush this out yet, but I just will mention that in terms of debt service and things we're doing as a district, and if we look forward to the budget, this is very new information, again, I haven't really looked into this with Potter yet, but there is an opportunity for us to look at one more slug of our outstanding debt service from 2016, and we could generate some significant savings in our operating budget. If need be, I would say. It would extend our term out about a year or so. But it's a scenario that we'll discuss as administration and possibly come back that if we feel that, I believe our budget for the 21-22 school year will be, challenging. And this is just the awareness that we do have some leeway on our outstanding debt, to give us some savings and a pretty significant savings. So I guess just put that out there while we, we're talking about, issuing some new money and consolidating debt and things like that, that there is some additional opportunity if our budget, gets to a very bad place.
So we'll have the full story on that then next month.
Yeah, exactly. We'll talk about it internally, but I just wanted to mention that since you have the charts in front of you and, things like that.
But we do like savings.
Yeah.
Mr. Matt, we just conferred a little bit, and based off of the way the motion is read, I think it gives us a little latitude to explore that, and then be able to bring those possibilities back to the board as we go through the process here.
Okay.
If I can make one other, was there anything else, Mr. Nyman, you were?
That's all I have, unless there's any other.
If I can make one other point, it's under E5, to approve an agreement with Holy Valley School District for a student to participate in agricultural engineering CTC program for the 2020-21 school year. This is a unique approval. I would like to point out that our student is here this evening, and I appreciate you staying this evening. This is a big time in their life. It's a good opportunity for the student to be able to embark on the agricultural engineering and partner with Oli to do their FFA program and the agricultural studies. And so it's a great opportunity for the student to be able to do this. So I just wanted to point that out and just applaud the student for coming this evening in a tie, being very professional. I'm sure he'd love to put that on. But just thank them for recognizing they're here this evening.
Mr. Fiber, I'm so glad you brought that up because I noticed that it was like a new opportunity. And again, we hadn't heard about it previously. So congratulations for being our first, and maybe there'll be more in the future. How was the opportunity that this exists made available information-wise to the rest of our student population?
So this is something the student had expressed interest in?
I figured that you probably came to us and said, could I do this? But if the answer is yes, then shouldn't we open it up to this gentleman's peers?
So the way the CTC programs work is that you partner with, we have a county CTC, which is the BCTC, and they have programming. If they have programming outside of what the school district offers or what BCTC offers, and another school district offers that, and then the student is inclined to, it's usually agriculture, that's the, then they can express interest. They usually express interest to their counselor, their guidance counselors, and then our guidance counselors help to facilitate that process. And we've done this several times in the past with Kutztown, where we facilitated having students go to Kutztown for their, whether that's new fund program or some other agricultural program. That's happened several times in the past. This one's a little bit more unique. We haven't partnered with Oli in the past, but it is not presented itself, and so we were able to support this student.
Yeah, but again, fabulous. I mean, 100%, 110% support. Really, what I'm saying is, have we communicated the availability of this opportunity to the rest of the Brandywine High School student body? Because maybe there's other folks like this gentleman who might not have the same charisma and confidence to ask. But if the information was presented, they might say, my gosh, I've been chomping at the bit for an opportunity like that.
Point taken. Thank you.
And then, just to follow up, could you just expand a little bit on number 6? So it's an agreement with consulting firm in this, it looks like psychology type world. So typically we have in-house psychologists. Can you explain to us how this situation is different and why we're making the change?
Yeah, a little bit of personnel, but I can kind of avoid most of it. So we had a partnership with a previous third-party contractor for our psychologist services, and that individual wasn't able to continue services for this school year, so we're partnering with a different agency to support that. So right now we have an in-house psychologist, we have this third-party psychologist, and we actually have a psychologist intern that's partnering with us for this year as well. So it actually gives us some additional supports, and during this time, during education in the world, it's actually nice to have that additional supports for our students. So we have 3 psychologists, one on staff, one third party, and then one intern that will be working with our teacher.
So this position in number 6 that you're talking about, is that primarily for the high school or which buildings?
Where
does it go across?
Yeah, we look at it across.
Okay.
Under board comment discussion. operations, so we already have a motion for, A through N. So can we get a roll call on those items, please?
Mrs. Henry? Yes. Mrs. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Sheets?
Yes.
Mr. Wagman?
Yes.
Mrs. Walter? Yes. Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Dr. Carter?
Yes.
Mrs. Eisenhardt? Yes. Mr. Tomasi?
Yes.
9 yeas, motion passes.
Okay, there is a letter O. Mr. Nyman, can you give us specifics on, the wording of letter O?
Yeah, I'll read that. The motion is to approve the administration to enter into a new money scenario of up to $5 million and refund the district's remaining 2014 notes as per the presentation on August 17th, 2020, by Mr. Scott Kramer from RBC Capital Markets.
So the motion's out there. I have a
Second.
how do you first?
Go first.
No. David and I already motioned the second motion.
I think you just did the first one, he's asking for a second motion for O.
Okay.
So I got the first for you. and
Okay.
second.
I-
Mr. Wagman and Mr. Sheets.
See, I was looking at the computer version of it, so O has always been on mine. So.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Sheets?
Yes.
Mr. Wagman?
Yes.
Mrs. Walter? Yes. Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Dr. Carter?
No.
Mrs. Eisenhardt?
Yes.
Mrs. Henry? Yes. Mr. Tomasi?
Yes.
8 yeas, 1 nay, motion passes.
To Roman number 3, superintendent's report, and a motion to approve the items in the superintendent's report.
So moved. Second.
Beaver,
Item A is the student handbooks for the year. So we asked the board to evaluate and approve the student handbooks to make those official. We have a new district employee handbook. That's Superintendent B. A lot of work was put into that in the summer to consolidate in one unified district handbook. And so we're excited to be presenting that this evening. We have the dual enrollment report from approved dual enrollment agreements to RAC University. To approve the new AP computer science curriculum. That is a new course that we're going to be doing this year. And so as we continue to build that computer science program, we're excited to be able to offer that program for our students this year. And then finally, we have one student that was able to attain his appropriate requirements for graduation. So we will be asking you to approve the diploma for additional student for the 2020 graduation year.
And this is minor, I know I mentioned this to you briefly when we were walking in the door. I didn't get to look at the handbooks for the employee or the student in much detail, but in regards to the math, are you gonna make sure that we put something in there about political, racial type things on masks are prohibited?
Yeah, what I think what we'll do is we'll evaluate that in our handbook and also I'll make sure I make it to our staff members tomorrow.
I'm sorry. The question was about like racist or offensive things.
Yeah, I've been seeing it online, masks that are coming out that could be questionable whether or not we want them on staff or students in the hallways, so I just want to make sure our bases are covered in the handbooks before the problem may occur.
I think that's actually covered in the, I think I saw that in the high school handbook, not necessarily
Is it?
speaking
Okay.
to masks, but just speaking to clothing in
In
general.
general, so
Should it be,
fall
yeah,
under that.
yeah, if it's
You did
deemed
say-
offensive.
Yeah, you did say this was going to be part of the,
Correct.
attire, so that.
So for the students, that's an easy one. For the staff, I think it probably should be more pointers. So yeah, I'll make sure we do that.
one more discussion. Public comment. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sheets?
Yes.
Mr. Wagman?
Yes.
Mrs. Walter?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver,
Yes.
Dr. Carter,
Yes.
Mrs. Eisenhardt? Yes. Mrs. Henry?
Yes.
Mrs. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Tomasi?
Yes.
9 yeas, motion passes.
Number 4, personnel report, motion to approve the items under personnel report.
So moved.
Hughes. Weaver.
So, the board is okay with this, there was no changes to the, personnel report. I would ask that, we consider the personnel report as originally presented. And if there's any specific questions, we can.
So, just a quick question on number 4, the co-curricular section. So again, I don't have access to the attachment personnel C4A, so I apologize if this is an obvious question, but at the last board meeting on August 3rd, there was discussion about clubs, and I believe the administration's position at that time was that no clubs at the middle school or high school would be activated in the yellow phase, at least for the time being. So under 4A, co-curricular advisors, can you just help me know what's included there?
So we decided not to do in-person clubs, but some of the guidance I heard in the discussions was, let's see if we can activate the opportunities for students with more of a remote virtual. So we're gonna look to still have those, but do it in a little bit of a different opportunity lens. So whether it's National Honor Society or some other club that is a paid club advisor, that we can still try to afford the student the best opportunity as possible.
Okay, so that's a change in position from the August 3rd kind of position.
We still don't have in-person clubs.
Right, understood, but the edict 2 weeks ago was, we're not doing clubs for now. As of today, you're saying we are doing clubs, they'll be modified, they'll be virtual, but there is some expectation that middle school and high school students can expect to be engaged in some optional clubs, and that the advisors to those clubs will be expected to perform their paid role guiding and advising those clubs.
If it's a paid role, absolutely, there will be an expectation that you can do that. It's gonna be a little bit fluid, honestly, as we start the school year, just to make sure that we get things going smoothly, and then we can just see some of it. If it's not attainable to the month, or you can look at this piece of it, but we want to at least pave the way to allow it to happen as possible.
Okay, thank you. It's okay. Yeah, thank you, thank you. I would just ask the next board meeting if I could be supplied with a computer like we have been in the habit of doing.
Yeah, and we'll make sure we have hard copies for everyone
Okay.
as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
You're welcome. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mrs. Walter? Yes. Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Dr. Carter?
Yes.
Mrs. Eisenhardt?
Yes.
Mrs. Henry? Yes. Mrs. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Sheets?
Yes.
Mr. Tomasi?
Yes.
9 yeas, motion passes.
Moving to 5, other business. Further public comment? Any more comment?
One thing that I just wanted to bring up, if it wasn't so late, I would say let's push for like some sort of direction on this, but just something I would like the board to think about, maybe something we can discuss during our next meeting. In the past, and when I say in the past, I'm talking about the way back past, I had brought up before about the possibility of live streaming or broadcasting our board meetings. COVID has kind of created us a very interesting opportunity where between Google Meets, Zoom meetings, and now doing, live broadcasts of our meetings, we've kind of fallen into that habit. What I would like to do is, I would like to codify that at some point in the next couple of months, and continue the live streaming of the meetings, and possibly figure out some way that we could work, to have the programs at the high school that work with broadcasting and work with multimedia, have them become involved with it as well. So that way we can make it part of the course. I do understand that there will be a cost associated with it because this is education and there's a cost associated with everything. However, with that being said, if we could pay our kids a couple of bucks an hour to come out and give them some real world experience of actually running a live stream and coordinating sound and video and that sort of stuff, and utilize resources that we already have through the BBN stuff, I think it would be a wonderful opportunity for our students. And I also think it would give the community a better avenue to see us in our meetings. I really believe that, since COVID started, we've been reaching a much larger audience. We have more informed populace in our area, and I think that's a great thing. So I appreciate everybody entertaining my ramble there for a second, but like I said, let's maybe think about doing this as like an agenda item the next month or so.
I agree, by the way, would it be perhaps a policy change maybe? So I don't know if it could go in the purview of the policy committee or in that domain, but I agree. And I'm not frankly sure we have to pay the kids. It would be a great internship for community service type thing, but I 100% support the recommendation and let's utilize the equipment and the talent that we have.
Awesome. Very good.
What else?
Yes.
All right, second. So, room number 6 is adjournment. I need to announce that we did have an executive session preceding this meeting regarding property discussions and personnel. Any other comments? Not, any further more discussion? Okay. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved. Second.
Adjournment is done.
Peace. Oh, whatever. No,
So you don't have enough on your plate, just need more thing to do.
That was fun. Nicely done, Mr. Positive.
Yeah.